Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He spent 14 years of service to his country as a Force Recon pipe hitter. He's conducted 8 deployments to Afghanistan with the Joint Special Operations Task Force. Everybody knows what that is. He was a professional MMA fighter and fought with Bellator, Strikeforce, World Series of Fighting, and is a Legacy FC champion. He's the author of 7 books. He's the founder of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, which is a veteran-based charity that focuses on vets and their families. He's also the co-founder of Save Our Allies, which is a group that just recently has focused on and saved over 15,000 individuals from the Afghanistan fiasco that's taken place over the last few months. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Chad Robichaux.
Right. Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming, man. I know we've been planning on this for a little while and tried to get you up here. I'm glad we finally made it work, and I know your schedule's busy. I appreciate you taking some time to come up here.
I think originally I had to cancel on you because of Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You left the country, and fucking couple months later, you're finally back. So
yeah, sorry to bump it, but it was for a good reason.
No, for sure. Yeah, I can't wait to get into that. Also, what was the thing that you hated to eat the most growing up?
Oh gosh, I'd say it's funny because I love it now. I hated spinach growing up. Yeah. Remember that wet spinach?
Yeah, canned Popeye style spinach.
Canned Popeye spinach.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, when I'm an adult, I would never eat spinach again. Now I go to the fridge, I grab a handful of raw spinach, ball it up in a wad, shove it in my mouth, and
that's the snack, huh?
Yeah, that's my snack. Yeah.
I mean, canned spinach is kind of its own fucking animal that way. But,
yeah, you gotta drain it.
It's not really meant to be canned. Who is the female pop artist that you're most embarrassed to admit that you listen to?
Norah Jones.
Is that right?
I don't know if she's a pop artist, but I say I'm not embarrassed anymore because I talked about it a lot. Sometimes people would say, "Hey, what's your fight music when you walk out? What do you listen to, like Megadeth or like Metallica?" I'm like, Norah Jones.
Really?
She steadies me, calms me down,
oh, shit.
And makes me feel like really complacent, like
composed.
Composed, yeah, real composed. And ironically, I used to listen to her in Afghanistan too. I had like the old. I don't know if it's iPods or whatever they called them back then, and I had to put one earbud in and listen to Norah Jones, kind of make me feel chill.
You know, I mean, it's a trip, and it may sound surprising, but thinking about it, I mean, especially like in a fight where composure is so key.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to not come out to something that's getting you all fucking fired up and overly aggressive, right?
I don't want to be overly hyped. I want to be poised and calm and focused.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there one that's like just shitty pop music that you wouldn't want to admit other than right now?
What's that one? Oh man, it's from the interview.
Oh, I know.
Tim Kennedy did a parody song of her.
Yeah, I can't think of what her name is, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I know she kissed a girl and she liked it.
Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
All right, we'll go with Katy Perry. That's good shit. What's your favorite country that you've been to and why, other than the United States?
Man, so many countries. I've been to like over 60 countries, and I love so many of them. You always like the most recent good experience you had. Tajikistan was just amazing. The people were super friendly, and the food was amazing. But I think if I had to single out, my favorite place, it would probably be Japan, because of the disciplined people there, the culture. I'm a martial artist, lifelong martial artist, so I really appreciate the culture and history, and aside from World War II. But I just love the people there, and they're so kind and so polite, and there's just such disciplined culture. Yeah. I love traveling to Japan and training in martial arts in Japan.
Oh, that's awesome. You mentioned Tajikistan. Was there, and that the food was good? Was there anything that totally outside the norm that was really good that you weren't expecting?
On my Instagram, I was like, I was like doing an SDR and like stuck at this spot for a long time, and I'm like waiting at this table and like by myself, and I'm like, man, I have to like be a little more. So I invited these guys to come sit with me and just, hey, come over, sit with me. I'll buy some food. So I'm like, what can I get you guys? And they ordered a round of yogurt. You drink the yogurt. And so I said, I'm like, I had it before, it was different there. And so we had a round of yogurt together and drank this glass of yogurt. And I was like, man, this is actually pretty good. And so the next time I ate, I actually got a glass for myself. So
like
a nice
drinkable
glass
fucking
of yogurt,
huh?
Yeah.
I mean, was it runny that way? Like
it was clumpy. It was like it looked like bad milk. It was like just full of chunks and clumpy. I had to take back of my spoon and stirred it to break it up.
But it was good, huh?
But it was pretty good. They put a little salt in it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of my Afghan buddies used to tell me about like if on a real hot day, like to cool them down, they have a glass of yogurt. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I like on a hot day, a freaking glass of yogurt. But it was really good. And,
it flavored at all, or just plain fucking?
Just plain yogurt, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it had a little salty taste to it, and it was pretty good. The first sip was like, I don't know, and it was like, my beard was pretty big, so it was stuck in my beard. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Salty, clumpy, fucking plain yogurt. That sounds like something else that people. Sounds like something else that one of the sexes doesn't particularly enjoy swallowing. What's the last book that you read and actually finished?
It's funny. You kind of got me in that second part because I read a lot of books and don't finish.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have a fuck ton of books that are half read or skimmed through or whatever.
So the last one I read and finished is Francis Chan's Letters to the Church, and I actually not only finished it, but I went back from the last page back to the first page and read it twice.
Yeah.
Because it was that good.
Was that good? Was it a long book or?
It's an average size. Probably just like on F America there. It's about that size. And Francis Chan talks about I don't know if you know who he is. He built this mega church in San Francisco and then walked away from it. And everybody thought he was nuts, but he just realized like, man, I built this big church for all these people here come and be entertained every weekend, and the church is really outside of the walls of this building. He took off overseas and started like just loving on people and doing amazing things for people, and walked away from this building this big mega church, and people thought he was nuts, and so he wrote this book, Letters to the Church, really just kind of like just challenging people who got in their comfort zone in America and these big churches, but aren't out serving people.
Yeah,
it was pretty controversial book, but for people of the faith, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it says a lot about his character too in doing that and realizing that. I mean, there's the Joel Osteen type of guy. What's your take on him being a pretty hardcore faith-based guy?
Yeah, I'm not a big Joel fan. I mean, I never try to like, I know he's done some good for the community, but I never try to like attack people. But I just believe as a Christian, like, I think that's like very like, it's very surface level. It's not deep. It doesn't really, his messages don't challenge me. So I know they'll challenge people. And, I think they could do a lot more for people in the community around the world. I mean, I think where they tend to lose a lot of folks, this is just my perspective on it, but when there's that level of success monetarily that gets poured back into itself, basically, then I think it tends to kind of poison the message a little bit. It does. Now, one thing a lot of people have problems with him about that I don't is his personal individual wealth.
Yeah. Because
I do know from people inside his circle that he doesn't take a salary from his church. All his money's off his books.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, man, if you want to make a lot of money like he does, go write some books. You know how hard it is. Yeah. But as far as like what the church does, I think that you're right. They put so much money back into the church. There's so much need out there, man, and there's so much more like the local churches like his could do that.
Yeah, it just seems so over the top.
I think a book like Francis Chan wrote would really be convicting and challenging to the people that's part of that church.
Yeah, maybe I ought to donate a bunch to him, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Just stand out in the parking lot and hand
them out. Yeah.
I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house. And they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us And so thank you to you guys. I'd also like to talk about my brand of dog food that just came out. What are the 2 key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those 2 components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero. What is your morning routine on days? I know you travel at least half the time, but on days where you're just at home, what's a normal morning routine for you?
Yeah, what I like to do is wake up and because I'm so busy, and so as soon as I get my phone in my hand, I'm just busy working. So I like to wake up, have a cup of tea. I don't do caffeinated coffee anymore. See, you're drinking Red Bull there. I actually had to start taking blood pressure medicine a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
Like if I'm gonna take blood pressure medicine, I'm gonna cut anything out of my life that would raise my blood pressure.
Yeah.
And so caffeine was one of them. So I have a cup of tea in the morning, and I like to sit with my wife because I'm probably not gonna see her all day, and have that time together. And I don't read my Bible. I listen to a Bible app. If I'm doing any reading, I'll read in the morning, and then and that's kind of like got it out of the way, and I can start my day. So that's kind of like my morning routine. I'm not a workout in the morning kind of person. I did it forever in the military.
Yeah.
My body just doesn't. My body performs well working out later in the day.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So a lot of people I know Jocko's like get up at 4:30 in the morning and grind. Man, I wouldn't be grinding very long. My body freaking be broken.
Yeah.
So I have to. My body, it takes a couple hours for my body to get warmed up, and I just perform better later in the day working out.
Yeah, you'd be grinding your body too much.
Yeah.
What time do you typically get up?
I like to wake up with the sunlight. So I open all my blinds. I have the blinds that like open from the bottom and top, and so I push them all down so like half. And so the sunlight, whatever sunlight wakes me up, that's when I wake up.
Oh, that's cool.
I wake up naturally like that. I think it's the healthiest way to wake up because your body it has a chemical release and wakes your body up naturally.
Yeah.
So usually I think right now it's like probably 6:45 right now, 7 o'clock. Yeah. The sun's waking me up. So
daylight savings kind of fucks you over a little bit then.
Yeah, but luckily, I know not everybody's has the liberty of having a schedule like I do.
Yeah.
I don't have to wake up for a job unless I have like a event or something like that.
Yeah.
So I have the freedom to be able to do that, and so I just feel like that's how I feel best.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm largely that same way. Do you eat anything first thing in the morning?
I do these perfect bars.
Yeah.
Not promoting them or anything. I don't have any relationship.
I've got one in the fridge there.
But I had several nutritionists through my life, and my last nutritionist said this is actually a perfect name. It's the perfect bar. It's like a perfect breakfast.
Yeah.
And I do one of those every single morning.
Yeah.
And it's funny. My dog, I have a Vishla, you've seen the video. So she sits there and waits. I'll give her a few pieces, and then she waits for the wrapper because it has all the oils, natural oils in it. And I'll give her the wrapper, and she'll take the wrapper and open it up with her paws and lick the inside of it. So she hears me open that fridge and grab that bar. She knows. She knows.
Go time, huh?
Yeah,
that's good stuff. Where are you originally from?
I'm from the Bayous, Louisiana, Ritland, Louisiana. Most people probably know Houma, Thibodeau area.
Yeah. So you're a Cajun guy, right?
Very much Cajun.
Yeah.
Both my parents spoke French. All four of my grandparents spoke French as the first language in their homes.
Do you speak it at all?
Growing up, I was the oldest grandkid, so I was the first generation that they stopped teaching it to.
Yeah.
But they were spoken enough to where I could understand what they were saying and communicate a little bit.
Yeah.
When I was, I'm 46 years old, but even at my age, there was still people having problems like not learning English, so they forbid us from speaking French in school. And so because of that, my parents and grandparents stopped teaching us. Yeah.
What was the best fucking no shit Cajun dish that grandma made?
Just my grandmother's stew.
It's
so good. Yeah, just like her shrimp stew is just like the best. Yeah. And I got a stepmom that's right there with that. I say it's my stepmom. She hadn't been my stepmom since I was 15 years old, but I still have a very close relationship with her. And every time I see her, she makes a freaking shrimp stew that's so good. It has eggs in it.
Yeah.
Drop an egg in it while it's really hot, so the egg kind of just boils in place. Oh man, it's so good. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going this week for Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah.
And
you guys, are you throwing down Cajun food as opposed to the traditional American Thanksgiving?
Oh yeah. We'll have there'll be a turkey in there somewhere in Louisiana. when you do like Thanksgiving or Christmas, you have like probably like a dozen main courses. Like you have like all these main courses, and it'll be gumbo, stew, a turkey. You got oyster dressing, rice dressing, cornbread dressing, like all these different dressings. It's a lot of food.
What would you say of all the traditional, like well-known Cajun dishes, what's the most overrated?
I think jambalaya.
Yeah.
Everybody like talks about jambalaya like it's, it's rice with a tomato base in it. And meat.
So it's not knocking your socks off?
Nah, not to me.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about jambalaya. I think it's because of the name.
Yeah, it just sounds fancy.
Sounds like Cajun, right?
That's funny shit. So you were the oldest of all the grandkids. How many siblings do you have?
Well, I have a half brother, and then I had a stepbrother and a stepsister that I was raised with. My stepbrother died 14 and 15 years old when he died.
Oh wow!
He was shot and killed, and which probably the reason I became a recon marine was because of him. And then my sister she's 7 years older than me. Oh. And it's funny, all these years later, my stepmom and stepsister, my dad, right after my brother was killed, my dad left and divorced my stepmom. I still am closer to my stepmom and stepsister than anybody else in my family. Like when I go to Thanksgiving, I'm going to my sister's house, and my mom, I call my sister and mom. They'll be there. And all these years later, we just stayed close. Probably because I lost my brother. Yeah. And we were just close growing up, and we just kept maintaining that relationship. So no blood relationship, but they're family. My family.
And they still live in that same area? They
still live in that same area, yeah.
Do you know what the circumstances were on losing your brother?
Yeah, it's when we grew up. My father was a Marine, Vietnam veteran, came home and was like really struggled, didn't get the help he needed, extremely physical, abusive. So we grew up in a like very dysfunctional home. So we became very close through that, and we were 13 and 14 years old. We watched the Navy. You probably seen that Navy SEAL video that was floating around back then.
Oh yeah,
they were. I forget what it was called, but it was like a recruiting video.
Yeah, be someone special.
Yeah. So we watched that, and we were like, that's what we want to do, Yeah. And but we were like, we don't want to join the Navy, and there was something about my dad, as dysfunctional as he was, him being a Marine, it was like something that all made him proud. So we like wanted to be Marine. So I read the book. I read the book Third Force Recon out of Vietnam, which I ended up being in that unit. Later on. So I read that book, and I'm like, well, this is like being a SEAL in the Marine Corps. And so me and my brother started running. We were already athletes, but we started running and swimming, and we did that for like a year. And we were together. We were together for like a week, and he went home to his biological father's house, and he got in a fight with his other stepbrother. And they were, one picked up his stepbrother picked up a gun. He was 11 years old. And he had a fire poker and tried to knock it out of his hand. Whether it's intentional or accidental, I don't know, but point blank range, 20 gauge shotgun, right to center mass of the chest, and he died right away. And obviously very devastating to me. He was the closest person to me at that time, and I just kept that focus that I wanted to fulfill that goal. And so, obviously, just like buds and BRC, like freaking freezing cold and. Yeah, bones are chattering, and you're like, but you remember that promise you made, and I want to fulfill that goal.
Yeah, that's devastating. The what were the consequences for the 11-year-old?
He ended up going in and out. He went to a kind of slap on the wrist detention facility, but it destroyed his life. I mean, he's been as an adult. I've never known him as an adult, but what I've heard is he's been in and out of drug rehab facilities, and that started as a teenager. He just never. The thing, like, it was a small town kind of thing, so everybody was like, everybody knew. You murderer, like you murdered this person, and so he grew up with that, and being identified as a murderer. That's tough. He was 11 years old. Obviously, I felt that way too back then. Now, sure. As an older man, I'm like, he was an 11-year-old kid. Yeah. Whether he did it on purpose or not, he was 11 years old. Yeah, that's fucking rough. But it definitely ruined his life.
You mentioned the SEALs versus Force Recon. A very common question I get, I'm sure you do too, is what's the difference between SEALs and Force Recon? What is your response to that?
It's changed so much over the years. I think SEALs have a broader mission scope. Recon had that broader mission scope until 2001 when we had Det 1 that formed in MARSOC, and so MARSOC took that raid force element away from the Recon community and let Marine Recon and Marine Force Recon go back to our core mission, which is hasty and deliberate reconnaissance missions for the CATF of the Commander of Amphibious Task Force, which is the head of the MUSOC, or in the battle, whoever the battlefield commander is. Force Recon could do that for foreign nations and bigger commands. Yeah. But it gave us back our mission, which is just the RNS element that you guys do well as SEALs. But that's one segment of what you guys do. Yeah. Like VBSSs and stuff like that, vessel-borne search and seizures. MARSOC took a lot of that over, and so Force Recon's doing very small level raids, hostage rescue, but primarily doing ASO, AFO operations and like really kind of precision special operations missions, and really just doing our core like battlefield reconnaissance. Yeah, to be the eyes and ears in the Marine Corps. And so it was really cool for me to watch the recon community go back to that. And I know it's something you guys still do as well, but you also kind of have that merged, where you're also being that assault raid force as well.
Yeah, I think, the interesting thing about just everything post 9/11 is how much it's changed. I mean, the entire military, but specifically all special operations. There's just so much work to be done in those regions that we've kind of all turned into the same thing in a lot of ways. Yeah. There's still personality unit to unit, but there's so much more parallel between every group now than there was, 20 years ago. I'm not saying I agree with this. I find it funny though. I Googled the fucking that answer just to see what comes up. And the question is, it's one of those, if you just Google Force Recon, one of the like recommended or other frequently asked questions is, are Recon Marines like Navy SEALs? And this is according to Google, fuck them, whatever. But it says they are similar to Navy SEALs in that they're heavily trained in airborne and combat diving techniques in order to allow them to bypass traditional land defense systems. The difference between them is that the SEAL's purpose is to kill the enemy, while Force Recon's main purpose is simply to gather intelligence. To me, that's kind of a slight to fucking Force Recon, which again I don't agree with. I find it funny that that's on there, but it's one of those things. I think a lot of people are confused, and I get asked that all the time. And to me, my response is not a lot. There's not a lot of difference. We worked with some of the best guys I've ever worked with. Were Force Recon guys down in Australia. On my first deployment, and I don't remember which group they were with, but just they were fucking awesome dudes. I mean, they were us in fucking Marine uniforms. I mean, not to say that we're awesome, just to highlight how good these guys were. I was really, really impressed, and it was the first time I'd ever actually worked with them. I mean, we'd bumped into them or whatever at ranges up at Pendleton or whatever, but to actually like do operational shit with them, they were fucking awesome guys, really awesome dudes.
I think that as a whole, the recon community and Force Recon units have felt the same way. I think before September 11th, there was always like kind of this rivalry.
Fuck those guys.
Yeah, and but after combat and being on these combined efforts together, I think everybody's gained a mutual respect and worked together and. I mean, shoot, all my deployments were SEALs. Yeah. It's and I would agree, they're very, very compatible. I mean, now we have a pipeline, so everybody, when you're a young kid and you're going through, you do the year-long pipeline. So you go to 4 weeks of infantry school, you go to boot camp, 4 weeks of infantry school, then you go to BRPC, which is basic recon prep course, and then when you that's basically just physical weeding out and hazing. Until you have like the core class, you want to start BRC, which is basic reconnaissance course. You do that, then you go to pre-scuba, combat dive, jump, sear, free fall, shooting package. Then you go to unit. So you show up at your unit with everything, just like if you go to SQT. Yeah. When you show up your unit, you should be ready to deploy. Yeah. And I mean, I remember back, I'm really proud of my community for having achieved that, because back in my day, you might wait like a few months after to go to dive school, and then you wait a few more months to go to jump school. Then if you're lucky, you're gonna get to go to free fall school. It took a while to get all those things, and now they're showing up at the unit with it. I was down speaking at 1st Recon Battalion recently, and they were showing me a video of this 19-year-old Lance Corporal doing a 30,000-foot jump at night with a 500-pound bundle strapped to him.
Man, that's crazy.
Like at 19 years old, I'm like, holy crap! Like,
it's nuts. I think all SOF units have gotten much smarter and more efficient at the initial pipeline of training, and is kind of nostalgic, romantically nostalgic it is to look back and kind of, you know, positively reminisce about the times where you had to earn free fall and you had to earn sniper, you know, whatever. Back prior to 9/11, that made sense, you know, because there wasn't much going on anyway, and it was kind of a rite of passage, I think, and it made sense to make guys earn these good deal schools. But now it's, I mean, Christ, there's so much work to be done. It just makes more sense to get guys as good as possible, as quick as possible, you know. But so that is good to see. So in high school, did you play sports?
I was primarily martial arts my entire life.
Yeah.
I played soccer. Played soccer a little bit in high school, and then we had a community wrestling club, and then had wrestling at our high school 1 year, and then we didn't have enough guys on the team to wrestle.
Oh wow!
So
what was the martial? I mean, what did you do martial arts wise growing up?
So I started when I was 5 in a taekwondo school, and then converted really quickly over to judo, and then Japanese jiu-jitsu. And so most of my childhood has been Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo. Yeah,
that's surprising because I mean this was pre-UFC, right? Where it was not super popular. Like nobody really even knew what it was.
Right.
How did you kind of stumble on it? And
especially in Ritland, Louisiana.
Yeah,
I was very lucky. My grandmother, you know, during that time, my mom and dad were divorcing. As a little kid, my grandmother, who's just an amazing lady, she's passed a few years ago, but she was just that grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather, were just like took care of me and made sure I was, you know, always in a good place. And they took me to martial arts school, and they didn't know where they were taking me. They just dropped me off, and it was this taekwondo school, and the guy had a taekwondo class that I was part of, and I remember just being a little kid, and somehow I couldn't remember why, but somebody took me over to the judo class, and I took the judo class, and that's what I gravitated to.
Yeah.
And then when I moved, I didn't have judo, so I went to Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is more like, not the same as Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's more like a traditional combative, a little more combative type martial art.
Yeah.
And so through my childhood, I went back and forth between Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo. Ended up getting in traditional jiu-jitsu, not specifically Japanese jiu-jitsu, ended up going all up to 3rd degree black belt there. I got a brown belt in judo. I stopped there because I never learned. So you gotta learn a lot of language and stuff like that. So I never progressed in that. And then I was my second year in the Marine Corps. I went looking, because I loved training so much. I went looking for a jiu-jitsu school on base, jiu-jitsu club on base, and went to this jiu-jitsu club, which ended up being a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I kind of stumbled into Brazilian jiu-jitsu there, and that's how I started Brazilian jiu-jitsu back in '95.
Wow, fuck, that's awesome, man. Starting out in Taekwondo, can you still bust out a Chuck Norris roundhouse for us?
I don't think I ever could.
Never.
I can barely touch my toes, man. Everybody thinks, oh, you do martial arts, you must be flexible.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, fuck, especially jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, to do a lot of the sweeps and certain things, I mean, you have to have some level of flexibility, right?
I have flexibility in certain directions, which is like awkward, and in other directions I don't. My hamstrings and legs are so tight.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing martial arts for over 40 years now. My body has a lot of and plus, I'm a little guy, so like carrying 150-pound rucks and jumping and all that stuff. Just my body's pretty torn up, but I'm thankful that I'm able to get out there and train every day still.
We'll definitely get into that. I would like to cover kind of your entry into the military. It sounds like the motivation came from your dad, and then fulfilling the promise to your brother was kind of the springboard in. What year did you come in?
93.
And where did you go to boot camp and first after that?
Yeah, so I went to boot camp in San Diego, which there's
MCRD.
2 boot camps for Marine Corps, Paris Island and San Diego, and it's kind of cool because my dad went to San Diego, myself, and then both my sons went to San Diego. So and now I go speak every quarter for like the last 7 years at MCRD San Diego.
Oh, that's cool.
I get to speak to all the recruits. Just spoke to like 3,000 of them there, and so I went there, and then from there I went to. Back then, you did Marine combat training and infantry school. Now you don't have to do both. I did Marine Corps combat training, and then infantry school, and
right there also.
It's Camp Hillen. So you go like a little bit north. That's where School of Infantry is, and you do like 4 weeks of Marine combat training. I think infantry school was like 8 or 9 weeks. To be a tow gunner, which was like an anti-tank.
Yeah. I saw a tow missile shot from some guys in the 15th MEU when we were going from Baghdad up to Tikrit. They shot a tow missile into a bus, and it was fucking awesome.
Oh, it had to be awesome.
It was fucking awesome. I mean, it was a bus filled with shitbags, so it wasn't like a fucking bluebird.
Bus, yeah.
It wasn't a school bus running around. It was fucking impressive.
Wonder if it was. I wonder what there's different models of tows. I wonder if it like hit right in the side, or sometimes if the tow will fly over and shoot and as it goes over, it shoots a warhead straight down through the top.
It was right through the front window.
Right through the front.
Yeah. Yep. As it was.
Some of the tow missiles, like I said, it will go over and shoot through the top because of the armor. The armor on top of the tank's lighter than the sides of the tank.
Yeah, that's some impressive technology. I mean, the wire guided, like it's so impressive to see done in person, applied the way that it was meant to be. I mean, I was like a kid in a fucking candy store. I was beside myself seeing it. It was just like, holy fuck, that was awesome.
I did get the fire one before, and I didn't do that job very long.
Yeah,
I did get the fire one right when I actually wanted to go to 20 on Palms to be a Marine in 20 on Palms because I heard you get to pick where you want to go at infantry school, and I'm like, I heard everybody's like harder in 20 on Palms, so I want to go there. I tried out for Recon while I was in SOI in infantry school, passed the NDOC, but they didn't take me anyway because they decided not. I don't know why they let us do the NDOC, but they decided not to take any young guys. So then I went to 20 on Palms. I didn't go to an infantry unit. I actually went to a first tank battalion, and they had a tow and scout platoon based on it was like a cat platoon, you had Humvees with 50 cals and Mark 19s and tow missiles for doing scouting for the tanks. So that's what I did, and then about 3 or 4 months into that, I tried out for the regimental stay platoon, which is surveillance target acquisitionings, which is scout snipers, and I got picked up there. Went to that unit and went through they have a stay school, which is like a regimental or division level stay school, and it's not this MOS scout sniper school. I went through that, and then I tried out for Recon again, and then got picked up.
Oh wow!
And so,
from your perspective, that process and specifically the selection, obviously it's tough. Were there things that surprised you about it either way that were harder than you thought or easier than you thought?
I think I was over-prepared physically, even for that, because when I was a teenager, I was running like I do 10 miles 5 days a week.
Oh wow!
I was in the pool, swimming 1,000 meters as a teenager, so I was prepared physically, and boot camp probably got me out of shape. And then I got there, and but two things that surprised me that was really hard for me in BRC for recon school. One was I thought I was mentally prepared for the cold, and because I was so rarely, I was 120 pounds.
Yeah,
the cold really hurt me. And two, I was a really good swimmer. I was super confident in the water. I could tread water for all day if I needed to. I was and I could swim forever, but I had never prepared for finning, and finning is not swimming.
Yeah. And
it kicked my butt. And my IT bands and my ankles, combined with running in all the sand, I was broken when I graduated. I went to BRC running a 16 just under 16 minute 3 mile, which is fast. And then I graduated running 21 minutes.
Yeah.
So it broke me. And I think it was the combination of finning and running in sand. I just wasn't prepared for those things.
I'm right there with you. I kind of was in the same boat. I grew up, swimming competitively and was a pretty good swimmer, but never swam with fins, and also guided off of a black line on the bottom of the swimming pool. I'd never swam open water. The first time I'd ever been out in the ocean was at Bud's. And, so yeah, it was a humbling experience for sure. And same thing, I had 7 stress fractures when I graduated. I was all fucked up, but that's interesting. I mean, it seems like it's a pretty common occurrence. But so once you made through that selection, where did you go and what happened after that?
Well, I ended up in it's 7th Marines. The recon community was kind of in disarray at that time. Originally went to 1st Recon Battalion. They made the battalion a company and sent a platoon to every regiment. And so I went to 7th Marines Regiment. They had these regimental recon platoons for about 7 years. I was there for 3 years at this unit. And General Mattis at the time was Colonel Mattis. So our platoon worked directly for Colonel Mattis, which was pretty cool. Yeah. We had our platoon commander and then him. So we got to work for him as a full bird colonel, and so it was a pretty cool experience. And we went back to 29 Palms, which is a great place to learn how to be a recon Marine, especially for navigating.
Little Joshua Tree action.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I mean, they have such a big training area. You could do live fire everywhere and anywhere. You working with all kind of different, like combined arms units. And then we had a barracks in Camp Pillen, so we'd right on the beach to Delmar. So we'd, helicopter or drive down to Camp Pillen. And so we just had the best of both worlds. We just got a tremendous amount of training. And out of that original platoon, man, like so many guys, like Mark Terrell, who's on the cover of Level Zero Heroes, Philip Thome, Pat McGrath, who went to the Air Force. So many guys like I came out of the original platoon, like just had amazing careers.
Yeah, that's tough to beat, man. It sounds like it was kind of the varsity squad there, huh?
Yeah, it was just we were out in 29 Palms, and when you're out in 29 Palms, all you do is train.
Yeah,
and,
there's no distraction.
You're like in San Diego, in 29 Palms, you just like freaking train all the time. So
yeah, no, I mean there's something to be said for that for sure.
Colonel Mattis was our regimental commander, and then we had a gunner, was a recon Marine from Vietnam. Gunners, I don't know if you know what a gunner is in the Marine Corps. It's like a CW05.
Yeah,
they're like a combat advisor to commanders, and so he was like tasked with. So he had this like Vietnam recon Marine like mentoring us.
Yeah,
and all he cared about was training. So it was a really unique opportunity, and we got a very, very great place to learn how to become a reconnaissance Marine.
What was your first deployment after all your training? Where did you go and what did you do?
JTF 6 missions down on the border. I don't know if you remember those. The JTF 6 were like a joint terrorism task force, but they were not really for terrorism. They're more for narcotics. Yeah. And so drug smuggling. So we're down in Mexico, on the Mexican border, in some of the national forests where they were smuggling drugs through. And so this was peacetime, 94, 95, 96, doing those type of operations. We did. They were 30-day operations. I think I did like maybe 4 or 5 of those. So it's kind of neat to be doing that kind of stuff in peacetime. Sure.
Was that more advisory stuff, or were you guys doing hands-on shit?
No, hands-on. Even in the States, like full kit, full ammo.
Really?
Yeah. Even in the States, cross-border too.
Like shoot 'em up?
No. It was more. It was definitely that what they Google thing was. It was going out gather intelligence, building. Finding. One of the main missions was they have the DEA would like scan and find these irrigation systems, and so we go be the human ground people to go in and find the irrigation systems and track those irrigation systems back to the grows. Oh wow! Because they'd have pretty sophisticated growing network like systems to grow narcotics underneath. Like they'd even have like freaking aircraft cables in the ground in a false ground.
No shit.
Gardens underneath, and so we. Yeah.
And the ingenuity of cartels, and it's only gotten more and more expansive since then, is mind-boggling. I mean, holy shit.
Yeah, that was my first time I seen somebody shot and killed was there. We were on the border, and we couldn't get engaged because we were so high. We were on like this really high mountaintop, looking down, and we seen guys smuggling backpacks across the border of narcotics, and we walked a Mexican federales onto them. So we're like, kind of walking them on using comms and our optics, walking them on. And right when we walked them on, they got in a gunfight and they killed some federales.
Oh shit!
And then we had a border patrol agent was down there liaison with them, got pinned down, so we were able to help get him out. That was the first time I ever was involved in anything like that.
Were there
95 or something like that? Yeah.
Was there strict ROEs in terms of, I mean, if you're full kit and fucking loaded out, I mean, what was the you can shoot if guideline?
Self-defense scenario, and then there's this I think it's called posse comitatus laws. You might be familiar with that, which is the military is not to be used against U.S. citizens or reporting on U.S. citizens. Obviously, it's probably a lot stricter now with people with illegals, but like something as simple as if somebody picked up someone. A group of people, I couldn't get their license plate, right? Because I'd be reporting on it. So there was like a ton of different rules like that. I remember we had to get a bunch of classes on that kind of stuff. And so engaging with U.S. citizens was. Yeah, makes this sense. Was Bill Clinton though. So that's
I mean it's staggering when you look at Biden and Clinton's records back then. Biden as a senator. and Bill Clinton, what they did in terms of introducing crime bills and the things that that now they are supposedly so against.
Right? Yeah, I remember they were attacking when Trump sent people down to U.S. service members down the border right away, and they were like, he's sending like a military down to the border. I'm like, I was down the border when Bill Clinton was when Bill Clinton was president. So
and Joe Biden was in his fucking ear too. All right. So once you kind of moved on from that, where did you go after that?
You know, I went to the reserves. I went to 3rd Force Recon Company as a reserves. I say I was a reservist, but I was literally working like 10 days a month there and going to college. I was a police officer at the time, trying to put myself through college because I was come back in as an officer. That was my plan. And then, then 9/11 happened. And when September 11th happened, I was a sergeant. I was a team leader at 3rd Force Recon Company. Working down there 10 days a month. I was like,
fuck that, I'm going.
Yeah. One, I was thinking, our lives are about to change, and two, I'm like, I'm going. I don't want to be an officer, and I don't want to be in the reserves. I want to go in active duty right away, and so I went to my unit. I did paperwork right away to switch back on active duty, and I remember as the paperwork was coming through, my CO came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I know you want to deploy, but our unit's not going to deploy right away." And I was like, the wind's like taking out of my sails, and the Federal Air Marshals was recruiting in all the reserve special operations unit because you had TS clearance and you had the experience. So I did that. I went straight to the FAMs as I went through, I think, a 2nd Air Marshal class, and flew for 2 years as the Air Marshal. But then I just couldn't get out of my system. I wanted to deploy so bad, and an opportunity came up for me to try out for do assessment and selection for a JSOC task force. I thought it was CAG because the guys recruiting were CAG guys, and some of the guys I've been friends with for years. A guy named Richard Cachocho, he was in Black Hawk Down. He was the guy on the mountain bike, and so he was the AFO there. And Norm Hooten, all those guys helped recruited me, and then so I did this assessment and selection, got selected, and then realized later it was the other unit, so I didn't go to CAG. I went to the other unit, and but because it was AFO mission, they handled a lot of the training for us, and it was pretty incredible opportunity that I never even knew existed. Operate as an AFO, and not a lot of people even in the special operations community understand what the AFO mission is.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, so AFO is Advanced Force Operations. Essentially, it's clandestine logistics. Probably the best way to describe it would be like you working undercover. So you either work in 2 or 3 man teams, or even sometimes a singleton operation, working with local nationals. You're off base, embedded with the locals, and building all the clandestine infrastructure to build the reason for your team to be in a place where they could capture or kill bad guys on their target list.
Yeah.
And so, setting up cover businesses, building infrastructure. I mean, you have to imagine if you're going to do a mission in a non-permissive location that is not where conventional forces would be. You have to have a reason to be there. You have to have safe houses, vehicles, permits for the vehicles to get to those places. There's just so much logistics it takes to get a successfully pull off operation like that. Somebody has to be on the ground doing that in advance, and that's the AFO team.
There's for sure an element to that that's very James Bond, right? And it's also something that I think most people, myself included, prior to being in the military, assumed that all special operations do, and there's not a lot of that kind of stuff. Right. Like the 5 or maybe 10% of the job that you see in the recruiting brochure is 5 to 10% of what you're actually doing, and the rest of it's just kind of getting kicked in the nuts over and over. But it sounds like a pretty neat gig, and it's also one that, again, I think when you think about being anywhere at this point, the permits and the licensing and the you not raising so many red flags of being there because so many things are out of place. To be able to fit in is pretty significant.
And the contingencies, like you have to think about the back end. Something goes wrong, like safe houses, contingencies, like having local weapons, local ammunition, a fortifiable position if guys have to E&E, and water, blood, medical, all that stuff has to be in place, and somebody has to be there on the ground to do it. Yeah. I like you said, it's kind of James Bondsy. It's funny you think about Afghanistan, you don't think James Bond. It's like caveman. Yeah,
but it is.
But it has that element to it. And the funny thing is not too many people want to do it.
Right.
I didn't realize that. I thought I was like, oh man, I got this cool opportunity. Then I realized later on, like, no one else wanted to do it.
How are we undermanned right now?
No one else wanted to do it. The assaulters were like, yeah, you guys do that. You guys are nuts. Like,
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a high risk with little reward that way, in terms of the quote unquote sexy door kicker ops. I mean, obviously you can find yourself in that position real quick and real easily, but
yeah, everybody wants to be shooting Taliban in the face and in that job,
yeah,
that's not what you get to do every day.
Yeah.
You're doing other stuff.
Sure. Before we get too far down that road, I wanted to take 2 steps back and talk about your time as a police officer and as a Air Marshal.
Yeah.
Just real quick, where were you a cop at?
New Orleans area, so St. Charles Parish. Yeah.
I mean, you probably saw some shit doing that, huh?
Yeah, I got in a shooting. I worked undercover right out of the academy because when I was in the military, and I came out of Recon, but I looked like super young, so they put me undercover narcotics right away, and then like right when I got off out of undercover narcotics into on the patrol, I got in a shooting and shot and me and my partner shot and killed this guy and went before grand jury, kind of the whole deal like you just see on the news sometimes, the grand jury indictment thing. It was a mess, and then we got awarded the Medal of Valor by the governor.
Wow, what were the circumstances that led to pulling your fucking gun on him?
Well, we were. So I heard on the radio my partner call. Like he called for backup. He was a Marine as well, and he was actually also my field training officer. Somebody I looked up to, super solid guy. And I started heading over there, and we had just got this new radio system, and something went wrong with it. Of course, timing, right? Whatever radio system, I had no comms with him. When I pulled up, he was in this house. He was standing on this elevated porch, as a modular home, and he's arguing with this lady. There's about 30 people out in the crowd around this porch, and we'd been to this house before. So the guy his name was Russell Stebbins, and his wife was there, and his 2 kids, which were like kind of really young school age kids in that crowd. And I recognized them walking up. And Steve asked me to handle this woman because the guy Russell had barricaded himself in the back with a gun, and so when in the back room, and so he went back to the window where the guy was, the room he was in, and I tried to get this lady off the porch. She started arguing with me. I actually just pushed her over the rail, and people pulled her over down. People from the crowd helped me pull her down, and I positioned myself in the front doorway of the house, and it was like a catty corner across. It was a hallway, so it's like a living room. I was looking into the living room, had a kitchen over to my right, and then over to my left, a catty corner was a hallway, and I remember looking like you seen like kids' toys on the floor. There was still dinner on the table because they were having dinner when they started arguing, and as I was looking across, there was a mirror in the hallway, and then I seen this guy Russell walk in the view of that mirror, and he's like leaning against the wall, press checking the chamber of his gun, and I'm like, just start yelling at him like a policeman would, like, hey, police, we're here, like, put the gun down, come out. Like he's like, I want to see my wife, and we're like, we'll put your gun down, and we could arrange that, put the gun down, and he's like telling us to leave, and I'm like, started getting like, man, he's gonna come out with this gun because because I could just tell on his tone he's gonna come out with this gun. And I started, and again I'm looking at like his family pictures. I'm like, man, I do not want to kill this guy in front of his family. His kids are behind me, his wife's there, and so if you'd asked me that morning, a guy points a gun at me, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna shoot him. But in that moment, I just I always just had this compassion over me, like, man, if I could talk this guy down, and I was like, if you come out, I'm gonna kill you. I remember telling him, if you come out, I'm going to kill you. Or you come out with your gun, I'm going to kill you. And when he turned the corner, he had the gun, but not over his shoulder. He had it over his shoulder.
What kind of gun was it?
It was a rifle.
Oh, okay.
It was a 30-30 rifle. And so he had it over his shoulder, and his finger was by the trigger well, and he was pointing it right at me. So use force. I could have shot him right there. But I still felt like I had control, and like I could see his finger by the trigger well, and he's pointing at me, kind of taunting me. I don't know why he did it that way, and so I started yelling at him that, and I'm like, I'm gonna effing kill you. Like
at this point, your gun's pointed at him.
Oh yeah, my gun's drawn. I'm pointing at him. I'm telling him I'm gonna effing kill you, and he's like, you need to leave. And I'm like, I'm put down your gun. He's like, you put down your gun, leave. And so I started walking towards him and closing the distance. again, I could have shot him at that point, but I was trying to save him. And I remember I lunged forward, I grabbed the rifle with his gun, I pushed it away from me so it wasn't pointing at me anymore. And I retained my weapon, pulled my weapon in close, and obviously I was already fighting at this time, or training a lot. I kicked him in the nuts, like not like a football kick, like a push kick, right? I kicked him right in the nuts, like
front kick to the fucking nads.
Tried to pull his gun away from him, and man, he was 6'3", 263 pounds, and I know exactly his height and weight now, and it didn't budge. And so the second time I kicked him, my arm must have came away from my body, and he grabbed my other wrist. So now we're like, I'm 130 pounds, I'm a little guy, and he's got this giant guy, and we're fighting over two guns, and I was like, man, he's not gonna give up. Like at this point, I was like, he's never gonna back down. And so I turned my gun over like to break his wrist, and I shot one, boom, and I shot 6 times, boom, 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 boom. And I didn't even realize my partner was behind me, but he shot right over my shoulder, shot 6 times, so we shot 12 times, hit him 11 times. Oh, it's good. I didn't drop the round, by the way.
Wasn't me.
So it wasn't me. Yeah. So no, we hit him 11, and he turned away, and he like landed on his knees, and he looked back at me, and just conversation like we're talking right now. He's like, "You killed me," and then he pushed him over, pulled his gun out from under him, handcuffed him. I had like blood all over me because one of his wrists that he had the gun, the wrist that I broke the grip from came across in front of him, and one of the rounds went through. So his wrist was like a noodle, and so as I was handcuffing him, it's just blood like everywhere. I had short sleeves on, and I heard him breathe out his last breath, and then all the police came at the time. Everybody came. So
were the majority of those 11 rounds in the torso?
All center mass, yeah. I remember seeing him hit. Hit him. He had a white T-shirt on. I remember seeing rounds like because everything like slowed down.
Yeah.
I could see I had a Glock, so I could see the casings rolling out the top of my gun. I could even hear the mechanics of my gun functioning. And hear I didn't know I never seen my partner, but I knew he was there, and I could hear the mechanics of his gun functioning, and I could see the rounds like hitting his white T-shirt. And
how was there a point or I guess a delay from the time that the rounds were in him? Like how long did it take for him to be neutralized, so to speak? Because it's one thing that gets, I think, misrepresented overwhelmingly by people who have never shot or have never been in a dangerous scenario. They're like, well, you could have shot him in the leg, or did you have to shoot him 12 fucking or whatever. And it's like, I mean, we've shot people and they've run hundreds of yards after they've taken 10 fucking rifle rounds to the torso. But was there any awareness of that, of like, dude, this fucking guy isn't going down, or was it 12 shots and he was out pretty quick, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I was still, when the first round went off, I was still pulling I don't know why, but I was still trying to pull his gun. And so, even after the first 1 or 2 rounds, he was, but I fired like a rhythm, like pop, 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 pop. And so it wasn't like we just kept, it went pretty fast, but he just stood there for a second after we shot, I remember, and he never let go of that gun. He turned around, still had that gun in his hand. He didn't drop it. He didn't go flying back, over the coffee table or anything like that. He just stood there and took all 11 of those rounds. Yeah. And then he just kind of, like when he collapsed, it was like he was still standing, and he kind of just like went down to his knees, like right in front of us. He never I don't even feel like he ever took a step backwards. Wow. And then he, like I said, he looked right at me, conversationally, like, you killed me. And his body kind of turned, like as he was going down, like kneeling, and he kind of was holding himself up, and then he just collapsed over. Yeah. But I couldn't tell you like a reference of time, because my reference of time was obviously pretty skewed. Like, sure. What's crazy though? I teach this a lot, and you and I are talking about like PTSD and stuff like that, and the limbic system and physiological effects of the human body. I never had he obviously didn't have ear probe and everything. He shot like next to my ear. I never heard ringing. My ears never rang. I just would hear like the snaps of the gun. I could hear the mechanics of the gun, and but my ears never rang. Wow. From one shot. And he was literally over my shoulder. That's wild. And but I could hear people outside talking. So I had audio exclusion for the gun here, but I could hear people talking outside. Yeah. And I remember when I got on top of him, hearing his wife, like just a blood curdling scream. I looked back, and the people were holding her, and I seen the kids. And because I remember like it was just almost like everything else was going besides her and the kids. I don't know. I just immediately picked her, and I'm like, oh man, they just saw this.
Fuck, man.
But I could hear all that, but never heard.
That's like some Avatar shit where Like your ears turn into fucking ear pro that
it's
like
crazy.
Power Ear Pro.
I think the human body is so incredible, and that experience is one of several experiences that just tell me this. This PTSD thing is not a disorder; it's our body doing exactly what it's trained to do based on
Right.
being part of things we were never intended to be part of. It's and just experiencing these things that we're not made to experience. But our body has this incredible ability to protect us. It's incredible.
No, it is, and it's incredible the pliability and recovery that it can accommodate as well.
Yeah, if you understand that, if you understand how the body works and the limbic system, how your body gets offset from those experiences, then you can learn how to reset your body back, and that's
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So the kids saw it.
Yeah, the kids saw.
Well, what was their reaction?
I think the kids just were kind of just standing there, like, and not
Didn't
even
really
moving,
understand.
like just kind of like just standing there, like probably watching a movie.
Man.
I mean, they had a perfect vantage point to see right through that doorway in the living room. Everyone saw, and that was kind of. And then the wife screaming, and I think one of the things that not hurt us, but like the reason we went through the grand jury indictment for second-degree murder was people were convinced that we were shooting him, that we executed him on his knees from the back. And I didn't understand that because they seemed so convincing in their statements at the time. But now that I understand the human body and the human mind a little bit, I think they heard the shots, they looked in and seen him after turn and on his knees.
Yeah.
And so they believed what they saw was that. But I mean, the perception of time and reality are
Sure.
so different in those.
This guy was he had a rap sheet prior to that, like he was a kind of a known
Yeah, a lot of
troublemaker.
domestic violence. Police officers at his house all the time. Lad drink. He was drunk in that moment.
It just seems like such a shitty scenario across the board. If you think about it from the big picture standpoint, like I get that you've got to protect people and their families and whatever. Man, I just I can't even imagine being in your shoes in that case. Like it's just a lose-lose. It seems like
Yeah, I mean the front page of the newspaper said cold-blooded murder. That was the headline.
Man.
And really small print said police say justified. And it's election year, so the DA let it go before grand jury.
What year was this?
It was in 98.
98. Wow.
98, yeah. And so I continued as a police officer after, but it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
As far as like.
Did the department have your back, or
They did, but I felt like they didn't at the time. Looking back, like at the time, I felt like they didn't want to make a decision, didn't take a position, but they have to go through a process of investigation.
Yeah.
So no one would know now. They did what they had to do, but at the time, I was like,
sure.
felt pretty betrayed. Me and my partner got separated. Our guns got taken away. Went to the detective bureau, got interviewed, got polygraphed. And then, then the next day the newspapers made that proclamation that we murdered the guy, and then the district attorney let it go before a grand jury. And I felt like, why does it even go before a grand jury? Why would you even consider charges against us? It was so clean.
Right.
Like I tried to save this guy's life, and I was just pissed off at the guy. I was pissed off at the guy that I shot because I'm like, I was mad. I was so angry at him for making me do that to him in front of him and his family. Like, why would you?
Just put the fucking gun down and come outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's just when you mix ego and temperament with alcohol, it's a bad fucking combination.
Yeah.
All right. So one other question I had: a cop. At what point in training, belt-wise, were you in jiu-jitsu at this point?
I was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu.
Did you ever go hands-on with somebody?
I was already a black belt in American jiu-jitsu, but I was a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is the one that counts.
Yeah. How would you compare the two toughness-wise? Is it a lot harder to get a black belt in Brazil?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Totally
it's
different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever go hands-on with somebody and use jiu-jitsu as a cop?
Yeah, all the time, man. I was like I said, I was a little guy, and I worked in New Orleans, so
what was
chasing people and
what was the textbook thing you used?
rear naked choke.
Yeah.
rear naked choke, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. I can say this now. Hopefully, nobody prosecute me for saying it. It was a lot easier to handcuff people unconscious than especially when they're 50, 60 pounds heavier than you, and they're fighting you.
Yeah. Does the 10-year statute of limitations apply to being a cop? I don't know. It should. It probably does, right?
I don't think, even so, hey, they went to jail safely and I went home safely.
Yeah. So like a takedown and a rear naked choke is the.
Yep. Yeah. When you train jiu-jitsu all the time and other people don't, it's pretty easy to find your way behind somebody's neck.
Yeah. Is there an element? I mean, I find myself experiencing this as being, fairly new to it. Going with somebody who's experienced and it's very choreographed almost.
Yeah.
And then going with somebody who's not. Like, at what point do you think in your progression through jiu-jitsu where it doesn't fucking matter?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because to me, like, it's hard to go against people that have no idea what they're doing because, like, you're still trying to figure it out, so to speak. Like, is there a point from your journey, I guess, where it felt like it didn't matter if they knew what they were doing or not? Like, you could get what you wanted out of it. And at what point was that? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's, even though now, and I've been on a mats for 40 years, 41 years now, it's still, when you go with someone that has no experience, it's not that it's as unpredictable. Because it's easy when you get another experienced guy like competing in the world championships at the black belt and black belt level. I could predict everything that guy's going to do because he's doing things correctly. But now I go with a white belt that's an athlete. He's got the same level of athleticism, but I can't predict what he's going to do because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And so it becomes a little kind of difficult to deal with. So you have to be a little bit more reactionary and less prescriptive.
Yeah.
Like a jiu-jitsu, I'm like, okay, I have him in this position. There's 5 things he could do. I have an answer for all 5 of those things. And so I feel him start to do one, boom, there's an answer for it. If he does this, I do this. It's like very, very methodical. And you don't even think about it. Your mind just knows that. Yeah. But when you deal with like an athletic white belt or a guy in the street, you can't predict it that way because you don't know what the hell he's going to do. Yeah. So it's a little bit more like just like spontaneous reaction. And that's why I enjoy training with like athletic newer guys because it lets me have that perspective for my self-defense side. Yeah. I know a lot of black belts don't like to train with junior guys. They just train with other black belts and stuff like that. I like to train with all different types of people because I still look at jiu-jitsu as a way for me to defend myself, my family. And so I want to train with that unpredictable athlete. Yeah. That's just going to go out there and go balls out, just trying to survive and rip my head off.
That's fascinating, man. That's cool. That's a great attitude to have. I know most of the higher level guys that I've talked to and trained with all take that same approach of what, not you, but the other, of like, no, I don't really like to roll with anything under an experienced purple belt just from an injury standpoint. Like, I'm tired of getting hurt by guys, which I can certainly understand.
And you do, because when I do get hurt, it's usually
some big unexperienced strong fucker that does some shit that totally out of left field you weren't expecting.
All he's thinking about was winning.
I fucked up a black belt.
I'm trying to protect them the whole time he's trying to murder me.
Taking a shot at the title, all right, so then you were an Air Marshal for a couple of years too, right? Yeah. Any cool stories from that, or was it pretty boring?
And it was so boring. I wanted the only thing I almost killed was myself in the bathroom. It's probably a bad joke, but it's just out of boredom. You just
that's fucking great.
I mean, there was a few, like, because I was doing I was a training officer, and then I was on like the team that would do like guys that were like on a terrorist like no-fly list. Mm-hmm. And so there's a few like sketchy little things that people doing, like dry runs of like probably testing security and stuff like that. But it was nothing exciting. I was just like itching. Like like within a year there, I'm like, I cannot let Afghanistan go by, and then Iraq. I cannot let these go by with my generation
flying on a plane.
At my age, like being a Force Recon Marine, like I have to go. And so a lot of people would have been like, why would you leave like a federal agent position with a 6C retirement? Because I had to resign to go back on active duty.
No, I totally get that.
I had to.
Yeah. What is the flying schedule for that?
I mean, most guys will fly like, I know it's a lot different now. When I was there, you'd fly like, the guys that were flying would fly 4 days a week and then have a training day, which is different. A lot of law enforcement get like 2 training days a year. They get training day a week. And so the 4 days would usually be like a 10-hour flight day, spend the night somewhere, 10-hour flight home, spend the night home, 10-hour flight out. So you're spending 2 nights a week on the road.
So the 10 hours of flight, that's 10 hours of actual flying. So maybe like 3 or 4 different flights all day long. Mm-hmm. Man, that would fucking suck.
It's terrible.
I mean, I hate flying once, like I don't want to fly 4 or 5 times a fucking day, 4 days.
Yeah, it's not like you get sleep, you go to sleep or anything. Yeah. Right. So,
man, you're not tossing.
You shouldn't be putting, some guys probably do, but you shouldn't be putting headphones on and watching a movie.
Yeah.
Paying attention.
Yeah, that would be fucking miserable. I mean, the only thing I like about flying is having 2 beers and falling asleep,
But it sounds super cool, right? Like Federal Air Marshal,
sure.
I was like, I'm going to go freaking shoot terrorists every single day. Like,
I'm going to stop fucking hijackers.
Stop hijackers every day, but it's like, oh man.
That's rough. All right, so you leave there, you resign, you go back to the warfighter focus, and you go to the AFO type program. Can you talk? I know that there's not a lot you can talk about in terms of the deployments and such. For what you can talk about, can you walk us through those subsequent deployments and what happened for what you can share?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's not a lot I can share specifically, but it was the command I was at in the time I was there in 8 deployments I was there. It's not like a lot of people that would go into deployment and then you come home and then maybe you get redeployed somewhere else. For me, as I say 8 deployments, there's really just one deployment. I got to come home on breaks because it's like one mission set, one place, continue. So there's a lot of there wasn't a lot of variety in what I did, but I loved it that way because I got to invest in something for 4 years and build towards it. And when I came home, I was like itching to go back because I'm like, the guys replacing me is going to be screwing it up, in my opinion, right? So I got to get back, and it was just so cool to have that continuity of one operation for such a sustained period of time, relationships with the command, relationships with the local nationals, with the locals that we were operating with, and it was just really neat to operate that way. It's a very unique opportunity, and you never live on base. Like I might have in 8 deployments, I probably spent like 2 weeks sleeping on base. Besides that, I was usually living out in community, so you don't go out and it's 24/7, and so it's a really neat opportunity to function that way, and the command probably had over 100 missions during my time there where they were either, capturing or killing very high level bad guy.
Based on shit that you did.
Yeah, well, based on, not on the intel side, because a lot of people confuse like the AFO side, like we're out gathering the human intelligence, stuff like that. Their targets are based on other things. So they'd be coming to us saying, here's our target, here's where we need to be, build us a reason to be there, get us there, and then get us off there safely. So I'd have to, I'd meet with the XO or CO and have to build that operation for them. And when they're doing their, ops briefs and stuff like that, I'm there like giving the contingencies and all those things. And here's all your local national assets. And so I build that for them, brief them on it, and then help them implement it and execute it. And using a lot of local national resources. And so, so I was able to do, over 100 missions success. And every one of their missions that I was part of was mission success every time.
Wow. That's really impressive and awesome. What year span was that 4-year period?
That was 2003 to 2007.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so I can only imagine that, living in those conditions, all of those relationships that you built, which are very atypical of the military experience, had a lot to do with your involvement in the last few months of evacuating people that you knew and worked with from back then. Yeah.
So there was a guy named Aziz. And if you read it in my other books, I've referred to him as Bashir as protecting his identity, but now I can say his name's Aziz. So Aziz and I, from the first deployment, he was my interpreter, and he went from interpreter to being my teammate. Like, because at first we're working like 2-man teams, and then I started working at singleton capacity with Aziz. So it was the 2 of us, and part of my job was not just working in Afghanistan, going cross border into Pakistan. And so we're like in the mountains of Afghanistan, we're in the mountains of Pakistan, like doing all this work, just the 2 of us in different villages and stuff like that. And Aziz like literally saved my life, like tangibly, like 3 times. And then on multiple occasions, seen him save other guys' lives. And then we did, I think, 3 QRFs that he and I were on to recover team guys. And he like put himself out there, man. So he's like an amazing human being. I mean, this guy, like, I lived in his home, played with his kids and his nieces and nephews, and he was my family. Like when I was out there, and I love this guy, and And then all these other guys that worked with us, these other Afghans, I had similar relationships with them, no more than Aziz. But towards our last deployment, one of the guys, and these guys were all OGA trained. They were pulled from the Northern Alliance, OGA trained, and then given back to us to implement in our program. And one of them flipped to the Taliban, ratted the other ones out, and 10 of them were rolled up, captured for about a week, and then killed.
Fuck.
And so for me, I had already lost like five Americans, some team guys, and then Foster Harrington, Force Recon Marine on our first deployment. And so, but Foster was a big loss for me. But something about losing these 10 guys, it might not seem like a big deal to a lot of other guys, but I mean, these guys were like I said, again, I lived in their homes. I was with their families. Like, I love these guys, and they love me, and they would have died for me, and I would have died for them, and they probably did die for me. And so at that point, I was already dealing with these physiological effects and struggling pretty hard. And I think if I was hanging on by a thread, that kind of broke. And I operated I did one more operation overseas. I say overseas, across border. And I was out for about 2 weeks, and man, I was like, I woke up out of a fog. Like, I was having these symptoms. My arms would go numb, my face would go numb, I felt like my throat was swelling shut. And I started having like this out of body, kind of like where it's called disassociation, where your mind feels like it's separate from your body. And then that's 2 weeks I was out and dealing with all that. Plus, I felt like I was like just in a fog, and I realized I was putting other people in danger, not just myself. Because before I didn't want to say anything because I'm like, the guys are gonna think I'm weak. If I go to mental health, I'm gonna lose my clearance. So I didn't get the help. But I had reached a point to where I was feeling like I was putting other people in danger. So I said something, was brought home, diagnosed with PTSD, and then about a week later, I was read out on my program, which was soul crushing.
I bet.
For my pride and my ego.
But I think that's one of the biggest problems with the military system in general is that there's a stigma attached, and I'm not naive to the fact that why it exists.
Sure.
Just for all the reasons you just said, is that it's impossible for other guys, especially if they're not experiencing it, to see a teammate that now all of a sudden is going through shit that they don't understand.
Yeah.
That it's like, fuck, dude, you're putting us all at risk, and so I think naturally people are going to be reluctant to reveal that because they don't want to be the weak link, especially in such a AA personality, competitive, culture that exists within the soft community. I don't know what the way around that is, but
we create outlets to where people get help without those repercussions, and that's one of the things we did at Mighty Oaks Foundation. Like, we got a lot, even though we're a faith-based organization, like, people don't come to us because of that. A lot of times they come to us because it's a safe place. Like, people with TS clearances, aviators, that would, if they say something and get pulled up flight status, we're not a clinical program, so we can help them on a peer-to-peer level without them having to reveal those things. And that's one of the reasons why I set it up that way.
That's awesome.
We're intentionally not clinical. We're not obligated to report.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's awesome. Do you know about how many individuals, military-wise, you guys have helped during your time?
Well, in our resiliency programs, I've had 250,000 active duty troops in our resiliency programs.
Holy shit.
In our recovery programs, which are ranches that we have, we've had 4,000 graduates.
Wow.
That's in 10 years, but we're doing about 1,000 per year now.
Man, that is really awesome.
And it's about $4 million a year in programming.
I saw that Lou Rivera is on your guys' program, so I did a deployment with Lou.
Really?
I did, yeah.
He's awesome. He's our ops.
Yeah.
He came to Mighty Oaks to get help and then never left.
Yeah.
and he's probably one of my, he is Mama Lou. You guys call them, we call him Mama Lou because I think his mom and Buds, they call them Mom.
Yeah.
So we call him, man, he's like that for us. He's like he like takes care of all of us, man. He's so awesome.
Yeah, we had a different nickname for him, but in fact, the next time you see him, call him Peekaboo Lou and see if he remembers that. He should.
I'll message him when we get out of here. Peekaboo Lou.
Yeah, be like, Mike says hi to Peekaboo Lou.
We just went to Peru together. Like we went to speak to the Peruvian military together.
Oh, no shit. Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Yeah, fucking great dude. Hell of an athlete too.
Yep.
All right, so within the scope of that 4-year period that you were doing that, is there you mentioned a couple of contingency QRF situations. Was there a hairiest, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened moment that you can kind of walk us through?
Yeah, I'll share a moment with you that maybe not an operations moment, but we were building a safe house, and we wanted to stock it. The command wanted to put a bunch of AK-47s in there, some RPGs, some PKMs, like ammo. So they wanted to have all local national kind of arsenal so I had coordinated to go buy a bunch from this elder, and he was sending his nephew, and Aziz, my interpreter, was like, hey, I think this guy's gonna try to roll you up, like for money, or I just feel, he's like, I have a bad feeling about going to buy these weapons from this guy. Let's bring some other teammates with us. So I obviously I trust my guy on the ground. So we got two other guys, Dano and Bank. So it's Dano, Bank, myself, Aziz, four of us, and we go into this kind of towards like a little north of like if you're going towards Bagram, that you got the Bagram Road. There's a road that goes north off of there, and it's like this dirt road, and then there was like this walled mud compound that we're gonna meet these guys at. So pull in, he pulls in, and he pulls in a Land Cruiser, and then Bink and Aziz were on the wall, like looking out towards the road, in case anybody else came, because Aziz's suspicion. And Dan spoke really good Dari at the time. I wasn't speaking. I spoke it okay at the time, but Dan spoke like fluent Dari. And so the guy cracks the back open, and we're looking at the box. They have these wood crated boxes from the Russians, right? So it has wood crated, and as we're going through the weapons and stuff like that, all of a sudden I hear Aziz like start yelling, and Bank yelling, and they basically, a car pulled up with four guys that look like Taliban, but they all four had AK-47s, and they pulled up at that gate, and Aziz and Bank had him pinned down, like, so they couldn't get out, and they're yelling at him, had him a gun pointing over the wall. Wow. And the guy tells us, like, it's okay, those are my friends, and we're like, how the F you know like who these guys are, right? Like, yeah. And so Dan sticks a pistol in the side of the guy's neck, and puts the guy against the car. And then I go out there and open the gate, and Bank's still holding cover, and me and Aziz go out, and we remove all four of the guys from the vehicle, zip tie them all, lay them in the ditch, and pull the weapons away from them. Move the car out because it was in the driveway to get in, and we're contemplating whether to what to do with these guys in the ditch, and so we ended up, because we didn't want to cause any trouble between the uncle and the uncle that we were working with. He was a mullah in the area. He's like a tribal leader in that area. He's like really influential. So we didn't want to cause any problems with him. So we didn't kill the guys. We just left them in the ditch. Took those keys, threw them way back in the field, and left. Yeah. But the car was left on the side of the road. But we took the weapons and the stuff, and we took the guy, the nephew. Yeah. And so we got him in the car, and Bank's like holding him. I'm in the back seat. Dan's driving, Aziz is in the front passenger seat, and Bank's like he's just so pissed that the guy just tried to freaking kill us, and he's got a pistol on the guy's head, and the guy's like begging, like, please don't kill me, saying to Dory, and Aziz like, and Bank's like, what's he saying? Tell him to shut the F up. Tell him to shut up. I'm gonna shoot him. He's like freaking out in the car. Tell him to shoot him. And Dan's like, we're not gonna shoot him. We're gonna drop him off. We're gonna drop him off like away from town, and we're gonna go tell his uncle. And so that we ended up dropping him off, kicking him out on the curb, left him zip tied, and went to his uncle and told him, and we never seen that guy again. Wow. But it was a pretty close call. And the reason I wanted to share that, when you asked what story to share, I wanted to share that one was because Aziz, that was one of the times Aziz saved my life. I mean, yeah. If I wouldn't listen to him, I would have probably been, they probably would have, rolled us up for the cash. Yeah. Killed me.
What? How much cash were you rolling with?
I mean, that deal was probably about $100K.
Yeah, in American currency.
In American currency. Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty common, right? You're rolling around and
I'd spend like $200,000-$300,000 sometimes in cash. Yeah. For houses and vehicles and stuff like that.
I mean, is there a level of accountability? I mean, there can only be so much. I mean, at some point you have to trust guys.
We did lifestyle polys regularly, but no, not a lot. I mean, I could write a hand receipt for $200,000 back then.
Wow. And you could charge them $100 and pocket $100 if you wanted.
$100, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, were there guys doing shit like that?
No one in our group that I knew of. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we did the lifestyle polys.
I've never been through one of those. I mean, how stressful and accurate are they?
I heard they're pretty. I hear they're pretty accurate, and we never had anybody fail one. Yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, especially because Aziz could have been doing it. Well, our local nationals could have been like, hey, this costs this, and in the back end, they go behind, they meet up later on and split the cash, right?
Is there any element of the fact that you're using American currency that would tip off the Taliban that they're working with Americans, or is it used enough over there? It was
used enough over there. So it was the currency to use, especially like once the banks opened up, and started being able to transfer money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another time I got, I'm pretty sure, like, if you heard me speak before, and in one of my books, I talk about the get off the X story, your typical X, like moving off the X story, but we had a truck full of Taliban guys try to roadblock us in and chase. They were following us, and then I did a deviation of my route, and they still following us. And they always say, like, when I made that block and they kept following me, I turned right. Then it didn't only let me know they were following me, it let them know that I knew they were following me.
Yeah.
So they start pretty aggressively trying to, and I went into Kabul trying to lose them in the traffic, and I ended up getting stuck at Masood Circle in the traffic jam, and they cut us off about 20 yards, made a roadblock, and the guy's jumping out the back, the passenger gets out, shuts the door, takes his time, gives me a hand signal to stop, and that's when stuck on the X, right? And thankful for training at Bill Scott Raceway every year. Train for the ramming technique. I hit the guys and I aimed for them and smashing that truck. And probably one of my favorite memories is when I hit that truck was seeing little Taliban guys fly out the back.
God, that's awesome.
You wonder what those guys wanted, right? Those guys, it probably had nothing to do with Americans and Taliban and operations. It was 100% to do with the fact that we were spending so much money all the time. But that week before, we had probably spent a couple $100,000 in cash deals, and it was robbery.
Wow. What were you driving?
That day I was driving a Toyota Prada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you ever rolling in the up armored Mercedes with the V12s or anything like that?
No. We never did up armored vehicles. It's funny. I just had a guy from which had the command just after me. I met this weekend in Texas, and we were talking about that, and we never did any up armored. One, we just didn't want to have that presence of, and two, we off road a lot.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Were any of the vehicles low vis protected, like that at least had some ballistic protection?
Some ballistic protection, yeah. Especially the ones we give to the command. We get them custom made like that.
Yeah. Any of them souped up engine wise that were at?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what were in them?
I'm not a car guy. I know you guys are.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, but some of the ones that the command would get, they'd have specific wants.
Yeah.
In suspension, and in the engine and performance, they'd want them. If it was going for the command for them to use, they'd want them. They had all kind of stuff they wanted.
Yeah.
From tires to suspension and everything.
Yeah. And they were quick.
And those guys get whatever they want.
Yeah. That's so fucking cool, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Were there instances where you, actually, before I ask you that, from the cash side standpoint, I'm still fascinated, I guess, by hearing how loose that was, and I know it kind of has to be that way for you to be able to do your job.
You're not going out and getting three. You're not doing we had to take a class called Acquisitions 101 from the Department of Defense, which is like procurement.
Yeah.
Government procurement and how you spend, like, the prudent way to spend government money, and it's like you can't go get three bids, like
lowest bidder. Put on a statement of work.
I'll tell you a crazy story about that one time, and I was like worried about, because when you get insecure, like somebody could think I'm stealing money, like because you're out by yourself spending money, like I don't want people to think, and like I had to get, the command wanted us to move some supplies from Kabul to this area. But nothing went to that area. Everything went back to Kabul, like from this area. And I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. And they're like, well, make it make sense. Like, we need you to be able to move something here to here. And I'm like, well, so I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, if they're moving stuff back, they have to move it in something. So they're loading it in sacks or boxes. So I'm like, they have to need burlap sacks. So I called up there and I called, I had one of my Afghan guys call up there, and they're like, you guys need some burlap sacks? And they're like, oh yeah, we need some burlap sacks up there. So I'm like, I need a truckload of burlap sacks, and I need them today. And I ended up paying, like, we were trying to haggle. $60,000 for burlap sacks.
Holy shit.
And, so I had to write I'm like, man, I had to write a hand receipt for $60,000 in burlap sacks. I'm like, no one's going to buy that. They think I'm pocketing money.
Yeah.
And I remember like being so like insecure about that. Like, I paid $60,000 for burlap sacks.
That's fucking wild. So, I mean, is that typically what you would carry the cash in, as in burlap sacks?
No, it wasn't to carry cash. It was to bring a truckload of burlap sacks up to this place.
I gotcha.
To build a footprint of traffic in and out of this place.
What did you typically keep that amount of cash in?
Oh, a safe. Like we had a safe house that we had.
I mean, like if you're delivering it to somebody, like in a fucking briefcase or
back. I'd have a little bag that I had a rafting bag inside of that had stuff inside of this satchel.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I remember when I flew with some of the guys. We flew out of Norfolk in a C-130, and I was by myself, and I didn't know any of the guys I was flying with, and I had a rafting bag that everybody knew it had like $500,000 in it, and all the guys were like giving me a hard time. One of the guys came up to me and was like, "Hey, that's my Ambien." He's like, "Hey, you want some Ambien? Take 2 of these."
Hey, want some tea? Drink this real quick.
Yeah, they were giving me a hard time.
Yeah, that's a trip. I mean, so from like again, I don't know why I'm so fascinated by that aspect of it, but I'm assuming there would have had to have been some sort of like warehouse with pallets of cash that supply you guys, and because I mean, you're not the only people doing that. I mean, is that how it worked? Is it?
No, we would. At first, we would fly our cash in. So we'd bring all our cash in with us, because flying out of the command we're at, unmanifested planes. We'd fly our cash in, but then they opened banks, and so they would transfer money into banks, and that was crazy, man. Like I'm surprised looking back. Like I think, wow, that was freaking nuts that we didn't get killed going to a bank, because you go into a bank in Kabul and they'd have like shoulder to shoulder like all these people in there, and it's chaos. No, there's no security in there. There's a glass and then they're handing like out. People aren't doing like $20 deposits and withdrawals. People are doing like thousands of dollars. So like we'd go in there and withdraw like $300,000 and stuff in a backpack, right, and shoulder to shoulder people in there, and then walk out. And I'm like, if I'm an Afghan, I could just be sitting in there all day with a cell phone, have my team outside, just like, okay, guys coming out, blue shirt, brown backpack, get him, and just wait until the guy with the most cash walks out, and so it'd be 2 of us. So like I go in the bank, and then my buddy Dave, lives up here, no, he lives in Austin, team guy, usually we do the bank runs together. He'd be sitting in his car, like positioned, looking for people outside to do just that, and you're sitting in his car with AK-47 waiting and I just like come out of that bank right in the car and peel out of there. Yeah. And we did that plenty of times, and
never had any close calls.
Thankfully, never had any close calls. Wow. And I think back of it now, and I'm like, man, that was the.
Did you guys ever use motorcycles to get around on?
Yeah, the little Honda ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're way more mobile. Like you can weave in and out of traffic.
I use those. We use those quite a bit.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what the engines were in those? Like,
I got a picture of one on my phone. Actually, that's not my phone, but like I think it's like little Honda 250s.
Oh, okay. So they're not going super fast.
Nothing like your beast over there.
Yeah.
And they're weird. They're 1 up and 4 down. Mm-hmm. The shifters are 1 up.
The GP moto shifting.
Yep.
That shit's weird. Really weird. It's to go from one to the other. I mean, there's plenty of guys that do it. I don't like the GP moto shifting at all, but it fucks me up.
Yeah, I also it messed me up at first too.
Yeah. I really don't get the neutral being between first and second. I think neutral should be all the way down or all the way up and whatever. But to me, that just makes more sense. You're never going to accidentally put it in neutral when you're trying to go from first to second doing it that way, and it's just easier to know it's all the way down to me. But were there any like legit gunfights that you got into in any of your time there with with any QRF stuff or people trying to fuck with you guys, or were you able to break contact and just get out of there?
Yeah, I was able to stay out of it. I was with the assault squadron one time when they got into it, and obviously stay out of their way. Yeah. And let them do their thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been able. I've made it all the way through there without not having anything like that.
Yeah. That's that's a testament to me that job hinges on your ability to keep that low profile. I mean, if and that's impressive.
So that's why kind of not everybody wants that job. They want to be able to be where the action's at.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, there's a ton of action there, and the unconventional nature of what you're doing and hanging it out there is certainly no fucking less. I mean, I'd say it's
pretty stressful.
It's more in a lot of ways, in most ways actually. But all right, so after your time there for 4 years, you come home. The PTSD, issue kind of basically transitions you out of the military, active duty wise. What was that transition like? And is that when you transitioned into focusing real heavy on MMA?
Yeah. So it was a fast transition for me because I'd already switched from, I didn't want to leave the command. So I just got a contract, stayed straight there. So when that was over, I didn't have a transition out of the military. I was already out.
Yeah.
So I, kind of burned myself that way, to be honest with you, by not being able to still be on active duty. But I think a lot of guys at those commands, they don't want to leave, so they get an independent contract there directly with their command, and so it kind of burnt me. I feel like, but it was a quick transition out. Did martial arts my whole life, so I was already fighting professionally at the time. So I just dove into that to try to get better. Obviously, didn't get better. I just got busy. Busy isn't always healing or better, and I just hit it really well. I soared like professionally, so won that legacy belt. I was 18-2 as a pro. Ranked number 6 was my highest ranking as a flyweight. So I did really well, and I opened a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in South Texas, and had 1,000 students. So I was making money, winning fights. On the surface, it looked good, but I was catastrophically failing personally. I was a tyrant to my family because I was so angry and frustrated, and me and my wife's marriage deteriorated. I ended up in an affair. We sold our home, filed for divorce, moved into separate apartments, and when I had this big fight in Strike Force 2010, and me and Tim Kennedy is a good friend of mine, and we fought together in Strike Force that night, and Draculino was my professor at the time, and Draculino fought on it. So it was really, really big night for fighting. I fought in front of like 10,000 people in the Toyota Center in Houston. I remember when the fight was over, like that focus on the fight, I think kept me busy. But when that fight was over, I went back to my apartment, and I like started thinking like really nothing moving forward without my family. And I just devastated my family and my wife and kids. And this thought just came over me, like maybe my family would be sad without me, but they would be better off. And I made a decision to take my life. And that same thought finds a home in the hearts of 20 plus veterans every single day. Like maybe my family, maybe our friends would be sad without me, but they'd be better off. And so I would, I was pretty, when I say I made a decision to take my life, I wasn't going to reach out to anybody and say, hey, I didn't want to cry for help. Like I was trying to keep it to myself in a silo. I didn't want anyone to intervene. And so I sit in my closet in my apartment, and I had my family pictures I put on the floor around me, and try to build up the courage to pull that trigger. I mean, obviously we know what happens when that trigger breaks, and but the one thought I had was like, somebody's gonna find me. Like somebody's gonna hear the gunshot. You're gonna show up missing. Someone's gonna find you. And so the thought that my only other person had a key to my apartment besides me was my son Hunter, my oldest son. That was enough to, not want my son to find me that way, and that was enough to pump the brakes. But I was in such a dark place at the time that I was back at it again the next day, trying to do it again. And
trying to do the fighting again, or trying to kill yourself?
To kill myself again. Yeah, I would talk myself out of it because I'm like, man, I don't want my son to find me this way. But he's gonna let someone in the apartment, and I don't know why I was so stuck on shooting myself over other ways, but I was, like I said, I was such a dark place. I'd be back at that moment, like, oh well, screw it, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then there was one morning, my wife came to my apartment. She knocked on the door, and I was in that closet with the pistol. And I wasn't going to answer it because I didn't know who it was. And when I heard her voice, I kind of panicked, like a little kid getting caught doing something wrong. I took the pistol and I hid it under a blanket. It was my closet. She would never came in there, but for some reason, like I felt ashamed. Probably wanted to hide it. And I went to the door, and I like started arguing with her. I really started berating her because I was so mad at her for interrupting me to kill myself, which sounds twisted, but I was just like, "What are you doing here? Like I didn't ask you to come over." And in the middle of the argument, she asked me a question that, radically changed my life, definitely saved my life. She's like, how could you do everything, you did. We met when we were 17 and 18, so she told me to go to BRC to become a Recon Marine and go to all these schools and trainings and deployments and train for MMA fights and cut 35 pounds of weight looking like a Holocaust victim, like the amount of discipline I had in my life professionally. She's like, how could you do all of that, and when it comes to your family, you'll quit? And there's no more soul cutting word to me than to be called a quitter.
Yeah.
And she was right. I'd been successful with professional things. When it came to the most important things, being a husband, being a father, being a young 17-year-old kid that raised his hand and made a commitment to do something important with his life, I quit all those things, including my own will to live. And in that moment, I made a pretty radical decision. I'm kind of like a radical decision maker. Like, I'm all in or all out. And I made a decision to get back in the fight. And the one thing I knew is I couldn't do it by myself. I knew I couldn't do it with the people I surrounded myself by, because I really had surrounded myself by people that told me everything I wanted to hear. I'm a black belt. I'm winning all these fights. Like a lot of people that are friends but kind of fans too.
Yes, men and blowing smoke.
Yeah, so I needed some accountability. I didn't have any, and I intentionally built that environment of no accountability in my life. And so I asked my wife if there was someone at this church she was going to, because she was really surrounded herself with some good people at church she was in that could help hold me accountable to the decision. And I met a man named Steve Toth, and I was meeting with Steve, and in fact, Steve was just meeting with me to introduce me to this guy named Mike Charbonnet, who was a retired SEAL. They thought was going to be a good connection for me. And Steve ended up being the right guy. He never served in the military, wasn't an MMA fighter or anything like that, but he was just really bold and blunt with me. I'd written a plan, like a 5-paragraph op order of how I was going to fix my life, and really wanting to manipulate him to show it to my wife, and I slid it over to him, and he didn't even look at it, and he slid it back over to me and told me I was going to fail. I remember being really offended, like, what do you mean I'm going to fail? Like, you didn't even look at it. And he tapped in that paper and he said, if this plan doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to let you waste my time, and I'm not going to waste yours. And, the reason that was so profound to me, because I had tried everything. I had been on the pills, the counseling. I had a professional and success and notability, financially, like all these things, some good things, some bad things, but none of those things changed my situation. And the one thing I knew I'd been dodging my whole life was the restoration of my faith. I was kind of angry with, if there is a God, I'm kind of a skeptic. If there is a God, I'm mad at him. I didn't understand a lot of things. I was a pretty angry place, and I had never really reconciled my faith. And we have a saying at Mighty Oaks Foundation. Your producer asked earlier, if what you're doing isn't working, then why not try something different? Everything I tried didn't work, so it's time for me to try something different. So I gave this guy Steve a chance. Ended up leading me into a relationship with Christ to become a Christian and really restore my faith. And through that next year, he mentored me in biblical living. And what that really meant was the things that I was dealing with before, like the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, depression, all those things wasn't going to go away. But now I was having new principles in my life to make different choices in response to those things. So would I still get angry? Would I still get frustrated? Would I still have anxiety? Of course, but I was responding to them differently. And what I discovered through that was that as bad as those things in my life had been, those things didn't lead me to be in a closet with a pistol in my hand. At my rock bottom, what led me there were the choices I made in response to those things. And now I'm getting mentored in a new way of making different choices that led me in a better place. And through that process of being intentional about that, over the next year, I found restoration in my family. I found hope again. And ultimately, I found purpose, which really manifested in a burden on my heart to help other veterans and share what I discovered with others. And so we started Mighty Oaks Foundation, did all the things at Mighty Oaks that we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah, that is a truly remarkable story. I appreciate you sharing that. I had no idea the depths to which you got in terms of being on the low side. Would you say, or how would you describe your focus on faith for your life up until that point? Was it not a big part of it?
No, it was pretty surface level. My wife and I'd always went to church before, but I think it was kind of like the married thing to do. And
yeah,
my wife goes to church, and she's my wife is always a real strong person of faith. So I'm like, well, she's in church, she's gonna be like this virtuous woman, and she's gonna be faithful and loyal, and my kids are gonna get good character and morals from Sunday school. But I kind of looked at Christian men as weak. To be honest with you, I kind of looked at people as faith of being weak. And I think early on when I got to Afghanistan, if you look at those pillars of resiliency the military talks about, mind, body, spirit, social, I was mentally tough, physically tough, socially I was with the best guys I could be with. But that spirit piece was a place that I thought I had to choose between being masculinity, being a warrior and a person of faith. Like I thought the two couldn't coexist. So I felt like early on in my life in military, especially being in Afghanistan, like I had to choose between the two, and faith was something I put on a shelf and do later on in my life when I got older. And I believe that deliberate decision at that very crucial time going to Afghanistan in my life, because I believe it was a deliberate decision. I believe it left a giant hole inside of me that I filled with hate and rage and anger, bitterness, all those kind of dark things. And then later on in life, fast forward those years later, when I, came in that restoration of my faith and understand biblically that Christian men could be masculine and could be warriors. In fact, that's what they're meant to be. It really brought a kind of a wholeness and healing that into me, and it helped me to start kind of calibrate my life into the life I believe I was created to live, and be a warrior in a truest sense of the way we were intended to be.
Yeah. Why do you suppose there is such a disconnect from the overwhelming majority of Christian men, at least in this country, and that kind of masculine in a healthy way? I think, to me, even the term toxic masculinity, I think, is an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Because masculinity, if it's truly masculine, isn't toxic by default. And so it's not masculinity if it's toxic. That's my take on it. But it does seem, and I agree. And I had another guest on here a few shows back that we got down this road a fair bit, and then I guess I'm curious why there seems to be such a prevalence with, at least on the surface, men that seem physically and from a warrior spirit standpoint exceptionally weak, in most Christian environments in this country. Why do you suppose that is?
Yeah, it is true that is the norm. The church lacks. The church lacks strong men, and so it's hard for me to. I used to be upset with those men, but it's hard for me to be upset with those men because they're filling a void that men like you or I have created. We should be the ones in our communities. Like when I say we, like the men that are the alphas, the strong men in our communities. We should be the one in the church taking the lead. And teaching people how to live quality biblical lives and lives the way they're intended to be, servants in their communities and churches. But we, historically that has happened, especially in this country. Yeah. And I think I think our culture in this country has just drawn away from it, flawed away from it. I don't know. I can't give you a reason why, but besides believing it has been done intentionally. I don't believe it's by accident or by natural drift. I believe there's a spiritual realm of warfare where Satan, the enemy, would try to pull men like you and I out of the church, because obviously it weakens the church and weakens communities and weakens homes and families and all those things that we need, that an enemy would want to destroy, a spiritual enemy would want to destroy. But I believe culturally it's been intentional as well. Where if you could pull men out of their rightful roles as leaders in their homes and their communities, primarily attacking the principles of faith, which is strong founding principles in this country, then you'll weaken the country. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that the result of that right now.
Yeah.
Take place.
Yeah. No, I think it's impossible to argue that that's not taking place. No two ways about it. So once you transferred over into the Mighty Oak or started the Mighty Oaks Foundation, would you say is that primarily what you do now, based off of that transition? Yeah,
and I have done that with incredible team. We have incredible board of directors right from Dallas. Ala West is on our board. And then we got a Sergeant Major Marine Corps, Commandant of the Marine Corps on our board, and we just got some incredible people. Mike Glover's advisor on our board as well. So we have some incredible people that are involved in the Mighty Oaks. Our staff, our team leaders. We have 20 full-time staff, 45 part-time that run our programs for us. And, we get to help a lot of people, and it's amazing to be able to give back to our community that way. Nothing we do, we don't charge for anything. Everything's free, including travel for spouses, for veterans, for active duty service members. It's been pretty incredible, and it's what I've done full-time, going out speaking to bases, speaking at churches, speaking at community events, corporate events, fundraising, doing shows like this to bring awareness to the veteran community that there is help. And then besides that, until recently, is all I did. And then Afghanistan, went sideways, and I stepped back into that with Saber Allies.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I'd like to take one step back and just talk a little bit more about the MMA stuff, just because I'm fascinated about it, and I know a lot of the viewers are. I won't drag it out too long, I promise. But I am curious, did the shift spiritually for you at that point, did that affect your MMA career? Did you decide, I don't want to compete anymore MMA-wise and just do only jiu-jitsu? Or like, was that the transition there?
Yeah, no, because I never had a moral obligation with fighting. 'Cause a lot of people, some people do. I've even been asked before, how could you fight MMA as a Christian? And I'm like, it's a sport like soccer to me. Like, if you did it with like malice, like I hate this guy, I want to beat him up, that may be different. He never did anything to me. But to me, it's a sport. Like some people, it's a game. Yeah. And there's so much mutual respect between my opponents. So I did fight 2 more times after starting Mighty Oaks, and I won 2 big fights. I beat Joseph Sandoval, a UFC fighter, 58 seconds, and I fought in World Series of Fighting on NBC Sports. I beat undefeated Andrew Yates, who was I was 38, he was 24, choked him unconscious, his first loss.
He looks just like Brian Ortega.
Yeah, to me, he did the same. He's really talented, and he came back and he's won. He's won everything since. And for me, like that'd be my retirement fight. But the reason I stopped wasn't anything to do with my faith. The reason I stopped is because I felt like I was at a point professionally in my career that I'm 38. Now the people that I'm going to be fighting are being people like him, that they're trying to elevate his career to beat a guy with a good record like mine. Yeah. So I'm not being looked at for that champion anymore. Yeah. And so I don't want to be that guy that went out being other people's springboards. Yeah. Because eventually age is going to catch up with me. The other thing, and there's never a good time for a true competitor to retire, because you win something, you're like, what's the next challenge? You lose and you got to redeem yourself. So it's never a good time for a competitor, and that's kind of how I feel about it. But there was a time like Mighty Oaks was getting so busy that to fight the level of fights that I have to fight, you got to be selfish, because you got to be focused on training yourself. And it was like, I felt it would be unfair to Mighty Oaks if I continued to fight. Yeah. The popularity of it, the notoriety of it, the platform that I get it wouldn't compensate the amount of time I'd have to invest in it. So it was a decision that, hey, it's time for me to let the next generation of fighters do this. I'll transition. I can still compete in jiu-jitsu. I still had some goals I wanted to do in jiu-jitsu. I wanted to win gold at Pans. I wanted to win gold in American Nationals and gold in the Mundials, the worlds at black belt level, and an international open. So since then I've won gold in American Nationals. I've won gold in an international open. And so I still have Pans and Mundials to win gold in. Yeah. So I still have.
It seems like there's a shitload of jiu-jitsu competitions at this point, where it's like, I see all the time. It reminds me of like ads in fucking Craigslist or the newspaper, like with dogs. Champion lines, like, oh, I got golds at this, golds at that. It's like, how many fucking world champions can there be?
Well, the one that counts, like people will say that they've been a world champion, and so I've won a lot. I won a lot of tournaments that were like worlds. Yeah. But the ones I was talking about are IBJJF, International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. Those are the ones that count.
I gotcha.
So when I say like the nationals, the worlds, the Pans, and the International Open in IBJJF. That's what those counts. Like you could win all these other tournaments and stuff like that, and they're cool. Like successful to win, you might compete. But if you really want to say you've won something, it's the IBJJF. That's the internationally recognized tournament, and that's the one that's the one that counts. Yeah,
I'm tracking. I've always been curious, and you're the first pro MMA fighter I've really been able to talk to. The feeling as you're getting ready to walk out there, and maybe the couple hours in the dressing room, locker room leading up to it, how does that compare to being overseas in an operational environment where your fucking life is on the line? Is there a comparison that's apt?
It's funny, as you were starting to ask that question, that's where my mind was going, like, to help you. It's that same feeling. Like it's the feeling of a clock ticking, like, like we know, like right now this interview is gonna be over and we're gonna be doing something, like, it's gonna there's something coming that you can't stop. Yeah. And it's like, so you're rolling out an operation, you're like, we're going to be on target.
Yeah. This is happening.
It's happening, right? You can't stop it. It's happening. And that's that feeling back in that locker room, especially like towards the end of my career, like I'm fighting at the end of the fight card, I'm fighting a main event or co-main event. And it's like, so you're hearing these fights like count down, you're hearing the crowd, there's a fight going and the crowd starts cheering. Okay, that one's over. Like, it's like, and it starts all the way back, like as the camp, the week you fly out to the fight, like, you do the weight cut, like these milestones that happen towards it, and the clock's like ticking, and it's building up. And so you have to really control your emotions, because you could really work against yourself if you let your emotions get ahead of you. You won't be composed. I think I'm an okay fighter in the gym. Like I'm an average, like probably above average jiu-jitsu black belt in the gym, but when I compete, I'm like as good, if not better, than when I am in the gym. And I believe most people compete at a level lower than you are.
Because of the mental toughness.
Because of the mental toughness. So I've always had that ability to just, that's one of the things I've really composed myself, stay focused, and be like a very tactical, composed fighter. And been able to carry that. And so that's been one of the things, just really trying to control my emotions. And I mean, you could let it yourself become, I've seen guys just crumble under that pressure. Yeah,
it's funny you mention that. I've never fought for a sport, so I'm completely, admittedly talking totally out of my ass, but it seems like even watching it on TV, you can see, even within one fighter, fight to fight, where sometimes they come out and like, dude looks on top of his game, he looks good. And then there's other times, Conor McGregor especially, I feel like every time I've seen him lose, like it felt like he was going to, like you could see it, and like he just didn't look like he was confident.
Right.
I mean, I could be totally wrong.
You're right. It's, you can see it in the same fighters, and something that you don't have, like, you can't just say, okay, I have that. I'm mentally composed.
You got to do it every time.
You have to control it every time.
Yeah.
And you should have a system in place, and you should have the right people around you when you're going out there. It's very, I mean, because it's the difference, to me, it's the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you think about what's really happening. You're about to be locked in a cage with another professional fighter that's been training like 2 to 3 months to fight you. Mm-hmm. Like it's,
that's a lot to think about for sure.
That's like building up, and it's like, it's a big, and you're probably going to get punched in the face. You're probably going to get kicked or kneed in the face.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of build up in your mind to it.
Yeah.
You can feel it all the way until you walk in there, you're doing the walk down. You like take a deep breath in, and you walk down, and you're walking down, and everybody's cheering, and it's like, you got all these like, the audio exclusion and stuff that we talked about earlier, all those effects are happening. You can feel them like happening, and things don't feel normal. And you get in the cage, and all the camera guys leave out the cage, and that gate closes. There's you and the referee, and you're like, you're ready, and then the referee like bite. It's like it's happening.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like any other big competition where once that starts and the butterflies are gone. And with the audio exclusion stuff, do you even hear the crowd or your coach, or is it just fucking, are you numb to all of that?
I always hear my coach really well. I don't hear the crowd. And the reason why I'm very deliberate in my I still am in jiu-jitsu, very deliberate in my training. The person that's going to be cornering me there, I train my mind to be familiar with his voice in the gym. So he's the person coaching me in the gym. I want to train my mind to be familiar with his voice and to be able to recognize his voice.
Yeah.
And so I don't have 3 guys in the corner all yelling. I have one guy that's give me instructions from the side. That way sense. My mind's like familiar with his voice, and I always recognize it. It's like being able to pick something out.
Yeah.
My ears pick it out. Even in jiu-jitsu, I do the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a toughest fighter that you've encountered, and by that, not the best or most gifted, but like the toughest to beat because of their resilience?
Yeah, I mean, my first loss, it's the same. My first loss and the toughest guy, Zach Makovsky. He was the Bellator champion. I fought him for the main event of Bellator. And, I was undefeated at the time, and it's kind of a weird thing because he beat me, and people were saying, oh man, I was getting interviewed after, like, how did it feel to lose your first fight? And I'm like, and I was like, okay with it. Not okay with losing. I'm not okay with losing. I never am. I'm like, I don't sleep at night even if I don't perform the way I want to. But it was something about like, I was like my very best that day. My camp was perfect. I was healthy. I went my very best, and he was just better. Like that time. And I was like, and so because of that, I felt like I did my best. I was like, I had this like some level of contentment there, but he was just what I realized when I fought him was like, okay, there is a next level. And that pushed me to train to that next level. Yeah. Like it was something about like, okay, like I thought I was the best. I thought I was unbeatable because I believed at the time after fighting all those fights with being undefeated, I'm like, nobody my size could ever beat me. Like I'm ranked number 6, but there's nobody better than me. Yeah. And when I was like, oh wow, okay, there is another level. Let me reach that level.
It was a humbling experience.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I mean, we still talk to this day. I mean, I talk to most of my opponents. You do a 3-month camp together. Yeah. And you get in there and share that time together. It's I think that's why you see people like, oh man, they're talking crap before to each other, and then they get in and they hug each other and tell each other they love each other, respect each other after.
It's just business.
It's funny and comical, but the truth is, like, there's so much mutual respect. You spend that intimate time of training for one another. You learn about each other, and it's hard not to just like learn about the personal lives. And then you get in there and you had this most intimate battle with one another.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you just respect. It's hard not to respect each other.
Sure. Yeah. Sambo versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have a thought or a theory, I mean, whatever you want to call it. It seems like the Dagestanis like are just on a different level, and I think my assumption is that a lot of it stems from the way that they live. Mm-hmm. You know, it's super high elevation. I mean, they're living like Afghan dirt farmers their entire fucking life. Like their lives are just tenfold harder than the hardest American life just by default of where they're at and how they live, and that has to play a big fucking role. But I am curious. It seems like, you know, it started with Khabib, but now you're seeing it with I can't even pronounce the fucking guy's name. There's several other guys coming up.
Islam's behind him.
Yeah, Makhachev and Kamzat or Kamzat, or you know,
solid too.
And there's some other guys that are, I'd say, yeah, I mean, probably equally as proficient, but it seems like their version of, you know, Russian combat Sambo always, and I mean, in every fight that I've watched, and I wouldn't say I'm a super fan, but I'm definitely a fancier of MMA and UFC fighting, or just MMA fighting, I guess, in general, is that it seems like in every instance, their version of that Sambo always fucking every time outclasses Jiu-Jitsu guys. Like Jiu-Jitsu guys from a hip dominant standpoint just cannot fucking do anything but get steamrolled by them. Why is that, do you think?
I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Sambo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the more technical art and better grappling art. I think the athletes you see at a Sambo are better athletes. Physically tougher, mentally tougher. And the competition that they have, the combat Sambo competition, is more geared for MMA than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition.
Do you think it's because there's an infusion of the hip strength from standing judo, tossing that's so prevalent there that just doesn't exist in Jiu-Jitsu, because it's starting from the ground or from the knees, and like the takedowns and the throwing is such an afterthought and an occasional training, broad spectrum wise with Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, 100. You're spot on. I mean, they, you know, Sambo has they not only the judo incorporated in it, but the wrestling as well.
Yeah,
and, you know, particularly the wrestling from that part of the world. It's just really solid wrestling.
Yeah,
and the training and lifestyle of wrestling is implemented into it. I mean, you watch a combat Sambo match, it's an MMA fight with pads on.
Yeah,
and you know, that's not jiu-jitsu,
right?
And so it's much different. And they're like you said, their lifestyle, their culture is different. You know, Brazilian lifestyle is pretty kind of on the beach, chill, relax. they go surfing. They go, you know, they're just it's pretty chill lifestyle. It's much different lifestyle. But yeah, I think so. I think, you know, all those aspects: mental toughness, physical toughness. You add in the wrestling and judo. It's much better.
Yeah,
much better art. And you've seen it. And I'm happy that Jiu-Jitsu is being challenged by it, because it forces guys to raise their level, just like I did after I fought Zach. Right now, if they want to keep up with Khabib and his team, they're gonna have to step it up.
Yeah,
because those guys, if not, those guys are gonna dominate
forever. Yeah. I mean, it seems like they already are. I'm always
they definitely are right now. It's their times right now.
Yeah, I mean, it just to me, it blows me away every time you see them. It's like once they grab a hold of somebody, they're just so dominant. You know, like hip strength and power wise, they just, nobody can fucking hold up to them. You know, I mean, to see somebody like, you've got to be a Dustin fan, right? I'm assuming. Yeah. One of the sponsors of this show, an intermittent sponsor, is a hot sauce company in Canada that makes his hot sauce, which is pretty funny. Yeah, but you know, to see a guy like him, or even, you know, Connor, love him or hate him, the guy's a fucking world-class athlete, you know, as a hell of a wrestler for not being a wrestler. Right. You know, is incredibly athletic and strong and fast, whatever. And to see Khabib do to those guys, I mean, frankly, to see Khabib do what he's done to everybody, it seems almost like a dad fighting his son. You know, it's just like the strength disparity is so gross. and so mismatched that it doesn't make sense. You know, like I don't know if Khabib is a 230-pound dude that's cutting a backstreet boy to fucking make weight or what, but it's just like I'm always blown away by it, and the common denominator is they're from that region, and they all do combat sambo that just seems to best jiu-jitsu every fucking time. But
yeah, you're right, it has been.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I love the sport. It's really neat. And you know, I admire the shit out of guys like you to have done all the things that you've done and also have done that is remarkable, man. That's really cool. When you mentioned the issues going back into Mighty Oaks and then kind of getting into Afghanistan, you separated from your wife. Is that your first wife? Is that still your now?
Still my wife. Yeah. We never went through the divorce. So it's been 26 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
26 years.
So all good now, I'm assuming.
All good now. Yeah. In fact, we have we're kind of laughing about it because we really can't believe it's us, but we have a marriage book coming out with Thomas Nelson.
No way.
In February. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
And we're like, man, it's pretty crazy to consider where we were to be putting a marriage book out.
Well, I mean, to me, that's you're the type of people that should put it out. You know, if you haven't been through trials and tough times and almost split, you know, then it's like getting marriage advice from Leave It to Beaver family, the Cleaver family. It's like, well, fuck, you've never been challenged, you know. So, that's really neat. Before we get into Afghanistan, one more thing on the Mighty Oaks thing. Where does the name come from, and what do you typically speak about? Is it kind of what you've been talking about, the PTSD type stuff, or is it a wide range?
A wide range, yeah. So the Mighty Oaks Foundation, Mighty Oaks comes from Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61 is in the Bible. It talks about a group of people in an area being coming down to the ruins, to the ashes, and rising up from the ashes and becoming mighty oaks of righteousness.
Oh, okay.
And then rebuilding what was broken.
Yeah.
So it's it's kind of really, I think, a challenge to the veteran community. It's kind of in ashes and not only being rebuilt but going back out and rebuilding others. So we're not just trying to help people; we're trying to put veterans in position to help other veterans. And so it's the Christian terms would be called discipleship, mentoring other people and to pay it forward.
I got you.
And so all of our alumni have the opportunity to be able to participate in investing in the process and pay it forward to others.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, when they come for the week that they come with, and a lot of people, I think it's important to say, is because we are a Christian organization, most people, I'd say about half the people that come would be Christians that are coming because, I heard of a Christian program. The other half of people would could care less. Most of them, they would say they have no faith or atheist or agnostic or something else. We've had Satanists come. We've had Muslims.
Satanists?
Yeah, we had Satanists come.
No shit.
Yeah, it was funny because his wife signed him up and he had no idea. He had like 666 on the back of his arm. And we were given the brief at the beginning and we were like, he's like, hey man, like, he's real cool. He's like a Marine infantry guy.
I'm in the wrong meeting.
Tattoo guy, that guy. And he's like, I didn't really know what this was. And he's like, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm in the wrong place. And we're like, hey, look, like, you don't have to believe what we believe. Like, to be at the program is not a big deal. And you just come and get what you get out of the week. And he's like, no, I do believe what you guys believe. I'm just on another team. Like, I'm a deacon in the Satanist church.
God,
so now this guy, he's actually is traveling around the world doing missionary work.
Really?
Yeah, doing like high risk missionary work. He
Wow.
ended up becoming a Christian through our program, and it's a pretty cool story.
That's a trip.
All kind of different guys come through, and so when they come there, what we really tell them is that what the faith-based piece has for us is we have 14 kind of core living principles and we take those principles from the Bible. So that's where they come from. It's like character, discipline. How do you manage your time? Like, and I think what's managing my time have to do with PTSD, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to fit 26 hours in a 24-hour day and you already have anxiety, it's not going to go well. So what's some life skills, how to manage your time and how to manage money and how to manage your relationship with your wife and your kids and your friends and what's the legacy you want to leave behind. So we have 14 core classes that we take the guys through, and they do it in a group. So the group will be a team leader that was trained by us through our training, our own training program that we have. It's called phase leadership. So we get a guy to a team leader level. So he'll be in this group, leading this group. We'll have another guy that's in that phase leadership training who's already been through, and then 4 brand new guys. So the 6 of them go through that week together, and all those team leaders teach those classes. The classes we have a curriculum for, but even though we have a curriculum, we train them to teach it from their personal story. So teaching it from personal testimony, their experience, what their life looked like with character, the character attributes they had before, and now that they have applied these principles in their life, what it looks like now, kind of where they were, where they are now, where they're headed.
Yeah.
And so it comes from a very much a place from personal testimony, and they kind of do the process together through that week.
Yeah.
And we found it to be on a peer-to-peer level and a very transparent level. It's been extremely effective.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's a very walk the walk, style of program, which I think is essential for people to buy into it. It's like, it's easy, for a talking head who hasn't lived through, I mean, just like with the marriage advice thing, it's like if I can't relate to you, it's hard to buy what you're selling. If not that you're selling something, but you know what I mean.
We have, the team leaders are like, you don't have to be a combat veteran to go, but all of our team leaders are combat veterans, to be specific, because we don't want them to be disqualified by the guys that aren't. They'd say, well, you don't know where I've been, so we want them to have that experience.
That makes sense.
We got a pretty good variety of type of guys, but we got some pipe hitter team leader. We got I don't know if you know Ben Ives.
Yeah.
Ben Ives is a team leader with us.
I do.
Dev group guy. And we got Luis Rivera. Got a couple of Marshal Recon guys. Some Green Berets. Got a PJ. So we got a lot of soft guys that are in our team leader staff. And then we got guys like, one of my favorite team leaders we have is an Army combat engineer. He's like Joe Bulldozers in the Army, and he's like amazing. So we got a pretty good variety of guys.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I love what you're doing there. I mean, it seems like an incredible program and one that will certainly push here, and I appreciate you sharing everything about it. It's fantastic, man. All right, Afghanistan. With all of the recent things that have transpired in Afghanistan that have gone about as bad as they could go, you and Tim Kennedy kind of joined forces and took action on your own to help evacuate people out and do what you can. Can you kind of walk us through how that took place and then what you guys ultimately did?
Yeah, so for me, it started with myself and Dan Stinson, who's a former Recon Marine who I worked at JSOC with, and we both worked with Aziz, and we had been trying for like 6 years to get Aziz out through the SIV process, the Special Immigrant Visa process, which was not working. And so, obviously, with the close relationship I told you about with Aziz, I'm like, man, I gotta get my brother out, gotta get his wife and kids out. So we started coming up with different ways to get him out, and but the clock was moving faster than we thought we could pull it off. And so we just went to, we were just going to go get him. And I asked him at first if he'd help. We were kind of talking about it. We were working some plans together to go get him and Aziz. Get Aziz and his family, put some money together. As we were planning and putting a team together, one of the guys in the team identified these 3,500 orphan kids that were stuck there too. The people had left their orphanage, and they need to be moved. And so we were like, hey, this is bigger than just Aziz's family. If we're going to go do this and we have the ability to do it, like the means, the ability, the kind of willingness, let's help as many people as we can. And so obviously we knew we wouldn't get any support from the U.S. government to do it. So we had a personal relationship within our team with the UAE royal family. And so we proposed a plan to them, said, hey, this is our plan. This is what we have the ability to do. This is who we are. We had 12 former soft guys with extensive experience. And so they came and said, okay, we'll help you. They gave us 2 C-17 planes, pilots, an airfield to leave in UAE from, and it gave us a joint operations center to set up in Abu Dhabi, and access to the humanitarian center to bring people there for medical care and housing and all that stuff. So
this is the UAE government.
The UAE government, yeah. And so we didn't know how much time we had because we didn't know when the U.S. military would actually leave the airport. So we just started executing our efforts to get American citizens, interpreters, their families, women that would be vulnerable, women groups that would be vulnerable, and then orphans, little kids, and Christians that we knew would be persecuted, people that wasn't from the Islamic faith. And so that's the groups we went after. And we just kept, first day we got 150 out. And we were like, yes, can't believe we actually pulled it off. And then, which included Aziz in the first group. We got Aziz and his family. And then it just kept happening. And by the time the last day ended up in the U.S. service, U.S. military pulled from the airport, we got about 12,000 people out altogether.
And what time frame?
10 days.
10 days.
12 of us in 10 days. Now, Save Our Allies is the organization we stood up. That's who we did it under. And so we started another 501c3 nonprofit through that, raised a ton of support, got able to pull it off. But we worked with a lot of other great organizations too. One of them, Glenn Beck, here from right here in Dallas, Mercury One.
Yeah.
Most of the flights that we used that were not UAE military aircraft were Glenn Beck and Nazarene Funds flights.
Oh, okay.
So we worked with some other great organizations that helped pull it off. But we were we had some our guys, our ground team going out in the ground grabbing people, ratlining them in the airport, and then we after the military left, we knew that there were still Americans there, despite the bull that the news is saying that there's only 200 now, when we know there are thousands still there. Besides, it doesn't matter if there's thousands or 200. If there's one there, we need to go get them.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's what America does. But nonetheless, we knew there's Americans still there. We knew there's interpreters still there. We knew vulnerable people still there. So we need to continue it. And so since then, we've been flying people out of remote parts of the country. And we got about another 3,000 out. And so we about 15,000 total. And then we also we built some ground options. Myself and one of our team members who was active duty Force Recon Marine, Dennis, I was just saying his first name, Dennis. The two of us, we kind of handpicked out of our group. We said we were the two guys to do it. Went into a neighboring country and to build routes out for people on foot. Because if you think of if you're Afghan in the Northern Alliance, the new resistance, right, is building safe housing people, and they want to cross the border to leave Afghanistan, and they're going into one of these neighboring countries. They don't know if they're going to run into a Taliban checkpoint, Chinese at the border. They don't ISI. They don't know who they're going to run into on the way out. You're going through 25,000 foot peaked mountain valleys. What if at the end you get to the border and there's a category 5 river or a 1,000 foot cliff? They don't know their way out. So they needed somebody from the other side to do ground reconnaissance and build routes out. And so Dennis and I decided we were going to do that. We went in and spent 10 days on the ground in a neighboring country, did 90 miles of border reconnaissance, and ran into Chinese military, Russian, other foreign militaries, and I won't say who, but other foreign militaries, and as well as Taliban, and plus a lot of SIGINT. So we had to shut our electronics off, and so we spent 10 days, about 23-hour days, no kidding, sleeping an hour a day, and after did 90 miles of border reconnaissance, we identified 6 crossings, and we literally swam across into Afghanistan every night and did forwarding, got forwarding data, which is, for those listening, forwarding data would be just collecting all the intelligence, doing what's the soil like, what's the gradient going in, is there cover on both sides, if you're going to use any kind of crossing points, is going to be a place to anchor in, what's the current of the water, how deep is the water, covering concealment on both sides, just getting all that data, what's the nearest security threats, whether it's Taliban, Chinese, Russian, what's the nearest security threats. And
how many of there were you doing this?
Two.
Two, yeah.
It was just two-man reconnaissance.
Were you guys armed and kitted up and all that?
No. We went totally, we went intentionally, unarmed.
Yeah, incognito to fit
in plain sight. It was in daytime's plain sight. In the nighttime, very incognito, because they get caught swimming across the river into Afghanistan in the middle of the night. You're either going to get shot or you're going to jail.
Yeah. Dude, that's hanging it out there, fucking huge. 2 dudes unarmed. Are you wearing just 5.11s and a foot
hiking clothes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Man, that's fucking wild.
Yeah. So it was some pretty. To give you an idea, there was one part that we crossed was there was one part we crossed that was a Chinese BMP with 3 Chinese soldiers on it and a PKM on the roof and a big spotlight, 4 people crossing the river, and then 100 yards down on the other side was a Taliban checkpoint with 3 Taliban, and we crossed right in between them to build a route. And a lot of people would say why a route there? And we've even some of the people in our network, the NGO network, were that's a terrible spot to cross. But if you're looking at all the factors, right? like where's the mountain passes feet out to where they don't have to pass Taliban checkpoints to go, and then how's it feed in the river to cross, and then where's it feed out on the other side? What's the current there? Because some spots of the river are like category 5, some spots are, really deep, some spots. So all those things have to line up.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of factors that they don't know. That's why we're there providing the information.
Yeah. I didn't realize that the Chinese had military presence there.
Yeah.
That's something that I've not heard in the media at all. I mean, you hear
you
they have an interest in it, but that they actually have armed fucking soldiers there.
And not rock kick. I mean, we've seen some rock kick walking down the border road. There was some like rock kicking infantry guys. Like every 50 meters is one of them. They rifle slung over their back. They're staring down, their hands in their pockets, kicking rocks down the road. Right, right. But then on the river, on the both sides, there's like guys in ghillie suits.
Wow.
With Dragonoffs. There's guys like natural veg. Like, I mean, there was one incident we ran into where like really like came like in, within 10 yards, stumbled upon in 10 yards in the middle of the night, like a Chinese patrol that were like in that, like when I say natural veg, like fresh clipped natural veg on them. They're like
did they see you guys? I mean, did they know you were there?
They seen us, but the way we responded was, I don't think they knew what to do. And we just moved on. And then it was like, everybody, it was like,
yeah, man.
But yeah, it was,
dude, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah. I mean, and, shape, silhouette, shine, those things like you, and those things you're looking for to break up, somebody's camouflage pattern, and they were so, they wasn't silhouette, but it was the shape, like they were behind this BMP that they had like all this natural veg on, and it caught my eye, the shape of it, and so it made me like look twice, looked again, and I'm looking at my buddy Dennis is like walking right to them, and I just, when I grabbed the back of his shirt, then like at the same time I grabbed the back of his shirt, I seen the guy sitting there, and he was camouflaged so well.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, holy crap. So these are like high level.
Yeah.
And everywhere.
No shit.
Everywhere. So for the Chinese, Afghanistan is like.
Yeah.
I mean, who has to gain right now leaving Afghanistan?
For sure.
Anyone in China. I mean, they wanted the lithium mineral rights in the Hindu Kush Mountains, the lithium there. They wanted Bagram Air Force Base. They have it now. They are occupying Bagram Air Force Base, and Iran has all this oil that they can't sell because of the trade embargoes and sanctions, and China doesn't have the oil they need, and the only thing sitting between that transaction was the U.S. military in Afghanistan. It's gone now, so now they could get all the oil they want, bypassing embargoes against from Iran.
It's easy to be immediately pissed by all of that, right?
Yeah.
I am curious, Afghanistan being the country that it is, though, I do feel like it's a matter of time before China pisses them off culturally, and they end up dudes getting their heads cut off on camera and whatever because they disrespected a woman or touched her hand, or like they don't give a fuck who you are.
Yeah,
money, military, whatever. Like if you're not on their team religiously that way, I can only imagine that's going to become a problem.
It's going to happen. I mean, they've done it to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's the graveyard of empires for a reason. And I don't see China even trying to have big picture economic deals with them. Like that, there's still a shelf life to me on that's going to wear out sooner than later. And it's going to turn into a fucking problem for them. I could be wrong, but to me,
you and I both hope you're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't imagine anything other than that, but I guess we'll see. But so you and Tim did some of that too, or?
Yeah, man. I got so many people got on Tim about doing that, and it's like, man, when Tim he didn't care about anybody knowing he was there or anything. If he's ever said anything about it, it's to help get support for it. But
why were people on him about it?
Because people were like thinking he was doing it for attention and whatever.
Oh.
Man, Tim, I've been knowing Tim for a long time. Tim's a solid dude, and when people look at his special forces career as like some kind of like poster boy thing, he's a legit like operator. You talk to anybody that's deployed with him, he's like a legit operator, scout sniper, ASO trained. I mean, he's. I mean, I talked to one of his commanders and just talked about some of his deployments and stuff like that. He's a legit operator, and so when I asked him to come out there with me, I wanted guys I could trust, and I wanted guys that had some kind of ASO level training. to do that kind of non-permissive work. And Tim was one of those guys. I trust him impeccably. I asked him to go, and he didn't hesitate. He said yes. And man, literally, like, we needed a guy on to augment the ground team right away. And we had two former SF guys, and they both SF and OGA. I won't say their names, but they were a 2-man ground team, and they just needed help. And so Tim literally like landed in Kabul, and 15 minutes later he's going outside the wire.
This is after America left, right?
This is while America's still in the airport.
Okay.
He went outside the airport, like literally 15 minutes on the ground.
Wow.
Now there's no Americans outside the airport. No military.
Right.
So he's kind of walking out, and I mean, he did exceptional job. He saved thousands of people's lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even wrap my mind around being able to pull that off without getting fucking rolled up, given the circumstances. It's awesome.
We definitely knew that there was a pretty high level of risk of doing that, but I think everybody made a kind of conscious decision. Like, these people really, no one else was going to help them.
Yeah. I've heard, a portion of the veteran population kind of espouse or speak to the disappointment. There's obvious disappointment in our government, but also to the disappointment of the Afghan response or lack thereof, and that, I can understand it's a complex issue, and I can see each side to it relatively objectively, because I don't really have any skin in the game. I don't have personal relationships with guys on the ground in Afghanistan. But do you share in any of that belief or opinion that they could have fought harder? Because the one thing that, just trying to, and I know it's not an apples to apples comparison entirely, but trying to put myself in that position here, it's like, I would die fighting. Like, I'm not running. I'm not, like, I don't care if it's 1,000 to 1, so be it. I'm going to take as many of them with me as I can. Like, there seemed to be not a lot of that in Afghanistan. Why do you think that is, and did that disappoint you? Yeah,
there's a couple of factors with it. First of all, I'll say the president was completely out of line and wrong when he said that you can't help people that won't fight for themselves, because 60,000 of them died in the last 20 years, fighting for their country and to help free their country so those daughters could go to school and be free. So that's the one factor. 60,000 of them did die for their country. I think they knew without the U.S. there in the air support, and they not only knew, but they've seen it for the last 20 years. That's what kept the Taliban at bay. They also knew that they wasn't fighting just Taliban; they're fighting Pakistan by proxy through ISI. I think they knew this was coming, and so they knew if the U.S. left, they had already been told and decided, like, systemically through the ANA, that the ANA was not going to be able to sustain, so they were not going to fight. And then I think as U.S. service members think, like, when we go and deploy and we fight, how hard we'd fight. But these guys, their wives and kids are down the street, so they know what's going to happen to their family. They may be killed fighting them, but their wives and kids are going to be tortured and killed and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of that as a factor. So there's so many like factors. Then you've seen the other side of it. You've seen guys that were like, seen this one video, this ANA soldier crying, like, please don't let me get, like, the commander's like trying to take his gun. He's like, please, I want to die with my gun in my hand. Like, I don't want to. And then you have all the guys, like, we've flown some commandos out. We've flown them to Abu Dhabi. They're there with their family in Abu Dhabi, and their family's safe, and they're like, okay, I want to go back now because I want to go free my country. So it's like a mix of it. I don't quite know how I feel about it, putting myself in their shoes. I feel like we definitely pulled the rug out from underneath them and set them up for failure, and they would have certainly died. I don't know how to respond in their position, especially considering like their families there and what their family would face and go through. Yeah. I'd almost be like thinking like I could see where they'd like, let me fight another day. Like, let me protect my family first and let me fight another day. If I succumb to this initial invasion, which we knew was going to come if America left, then I could move my family to Panjshir.
Yeah.
I could get them out, get my family safe, then I'd come back and fight. I think there's a lot of that too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not here to criticize them. I can, like I said, I can see really all sides to it, and it's just a shitty scenario across the board. I've seen some fellow, vets that have spent time there that, have really kind of motherfucked them for not putting up more of a fight. And again, I mean, everybody gets their own opinion, and I just was curious kind of where.
I seen a poll recently. It said 77% of veterans supported the NGO withdrawal. Like 77% of the veteran community did, and it said 45% of veterans participated somehow, like getting a WhatsApp signal.
Oh wow!
To move guys out, which was, I thought it was pretty interesting number.
Yeah.
Which also probably speaks to the potential mental health issues that we're seeing because of it. Because 45% were participating somehow, and didn't successfully help someone, which most of them didn't.
Yeah.
How they can deal with that.
Yeah, it's tough.
We've had that. This month has been the highest in 10 years for us for applications.
Really?
This last 2 months, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Is Aziz stateside now?
No, he's still in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. Is the goal to get him here, right?
We're working hard to get him here, trying like 3 or 4 different ways to get him here. One of the things was the SIV, because he was in a SAP program like that. He was getting paid not directly through the government, so he had never had a U.S. contractor number. A lot of special operations guys, like interpreters that were working in special programs with SEALs or different special units, or even like intelligence agencies, if they didn't get paid directly from the government and get a government contract number, then they don't qualify for SIV.
Oh wow!
Which is pretty crappy, because these are the highest level guys that did the most high risk stuff, and because they don't have a government contract number.
And also the juiciest for the other side to get a hold of. Yeah,
for sure.
Man, that's a shit deal. If he does make it here, do you think we could get him on the show?
Oh, absolutely. He's coming to Texas.
That'd be
he's
awesome.
He's already got a job, a house, everything.
Nice.
He said he'd come. He said he's coming to Texas.
I'd love to sit down with him. That'd be awesome.
He would love to too, and he speaks great English, and he'd be a good interview.
That'd be awesome. Good stuff. Anything else that you want to share about the operations in Afghanistan that we haven't talked about?
No, just that they're still going. I think it's important for people to know that this isn't going to be over anytime soon.
Well, so I guess with the American presence completely withdrawn, how are you able to even fly in there at this point?
Yeah, so as far as flying in Afghanistan, we are not. Yeah. So we're using Afghans on the ground to help move people. They move them across border. So we coordinate with them, and they're secretly moving people. We're safe housing them, moving them across border. When they get into other countries, we bring them from other countries to a lily pad spot to eventually get to the States.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even get to the States. Maybe
somewhere else,
somewhere else. To get them safe.
Yeah.
So we're not going into Afghanistan. I mean, if we are, it's like, 100 yards, 200 yards into the country, but from a border. But we're not going running around Kabul anymore. That window's closed.
Yeah. I can imagine. Man, that's wild shit. Well, I'll tell you, man, sitting here talking to you about your career and life is, it makes me feel like I haven't done jack shit, I mean, goddamn. It's remarkable how many things you've accomplished and just the path that you've taken. It's really, really neat, fascinating, and I can't thank you enough for sharing it. Where can people find you online for all your different endeavors?
Yeah, I'm on all social media platforms. The one I'm most active on is Instagram, so Chad Robo _official, or you can just look for my name, Chad Robichaux. I think because of the content I put out, you got to type my full everything out, because they got me semi-shadow banned still.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can't. It's even though I got the verified badge, I'm like one of the last Chads that'll come up.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, but and then if you want to. If any veterans are interested in coming to Mighty Oaks, again, everything's free, including travel. Veterans, active duty service members, spouses, first responders as well. We do free programs for first responders. You go to mightyoaksprograms.org and apply there, and we'll get back to you right away. If you want support, it's free for veterans because people support. We do about $4 million a year in programming, so we need all support we get.
Wow.
Go support there. And then saveourallies.org is the Afghanistan effort if you're interested in that. If you got Afghans, like, how do I get out? How do I get help? They can apply for help there. We're not going to get back to them right away because we're getting so many, but we'll get them categorized on our list. And then you also could support financially there too. So we need help in all those efforts.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. I encourage everybody listening to go check all of that info out and support where you can. Chad, I can't thank you enough again for coming on and sharing your story. It's fascinating, remarkable, and I'm damn honored to know you. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, and congrats on your book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll get you a non-censored copy here to take home and share with your kids, I'm sure.
Right on.
Yeah,
kids will love it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Nothing they haven't heard, right?
Yep.
Yeah. To you guys, the listener, appreciate, again, episode after episode. It's because of you guys that and your support that gives us the opportunity to bring fascinating guests like Chad on. So thank you for listening. Appreciate it. If not, choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.